Sixth day of the month, and it's a brand new week, first day of the week. We call it Monday. Thank you for joining us on the AM show. We're glad to have your company. Well, coming up this morning, I'll be serving you the news presently, I should say. But in the next few minutes after that, we'll be joined by Afil Moni, former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. He'll be joining us to delve into the newspapers. But after that, we bring you two major issues. But before we cross over to Tema, we'll be talking about that stretch. Government last week extended the deadline for the domestic debt exchange program to February the 7th, which is just tomorrow. Well, the Finance Ministry says it has reached a number of agreements with the stakeholders. We'll be getting to know a lot more detail about that. It has also said that discussions are being finalized with organized labor and pension fund trustees on a separate arrangement in accordance with the Memorandum of Understanding with organized labor on December the 22nd last year. We've got that on our chopping board this morning as we engage Professor John Gachi, Dean of the UCC School of Business. We're also joined by a lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, Dr. Patrick Isuming. But also on the show, we focus our cameras on the Tema Motorway, as I hinted at earlier. The road has too many life-threatening potholes which make driving unsafe. I was on that stretch recently, and trust me, the patches do more harm to your car than good. We've got a piece from that stretch for you, and after that, we'd be engaging the relevant authorities. And closely tied to that will be our Drive Safe segment and tip for the week. Later, we offer you the opportunity to share your thoughts with us, because guess what? This show is all about you, Ghana4. So do stay with us in the course of the show. The hashtag is AM Show. Let us know what you're thinking. If you have any birthdays or anything, shoot them to us. And in the course of the news review, I'll be sure to announce them. On that note, let's all get informed by way of the news. Up next. Welcome to the news on the AM show. In our first story, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia is asking Muslims in Ghana to unite to fight their common enemies. He describes illiteracy, disease, and poverty as reasons behind the slow progression of Muslims across the country. Precious Semevo has more.
The two-day extraordinary meeting of the Conference of Regional Chief Imams afforded participants the chance to discuss, approve, and adopt their draft constitution that also borders on peace, unity, and development. The conference at the Ghana Muslim Mission Mosque in Sunyani in the Bono region was attended by various Islamic sects, chiefs, and other Islamic organizations. In his address, the Vice President Alhaji Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia said diversity in Islam would continue, hence the need for Muslims to come together and fight the common enemy to ensure development in their communities. Alhaji Ben Abdallah Banda, the coordinator for Zongo and Inner City Development, spoke on his behalf.
For the Muslim Ummah, our common enemies to me are three: illiteracy, disease, and poverty. Our road is bad. How do we as a collectivity deal with it? We have no water, we have no electricity, we have no schools, we need scholarships. Issue bordering on livelihood. I am foreseeing a day when all these sectorial leaders will sit on the table, joy, and put behind us the diversity in Islam, our seeming differences, and see ourselves as Muslims, and collectively fight those, our common enemies.
He also urged Muslims to show more interest in politics, which influences policies and development.
And we cannot develop if we have no relationship with politics. Politics brings development. Politics impacts on our livelihoods. Politics impacts on our adeen. The policies that government, day in, day out, fashions out, we need to be interested and be asking ourselves whether the policies are policies that we as Muslims can also contribute.
Bono Regional Minister Justina Osu-Banahene, in her remarks, appealed to the imams to show more interest in the education of their children for development.
Education is the bedrock of development. In this respect, I call on imams as leaders of the Muslim community to show extra interest in the education of the Muslim children by collaborating with the Islamic Education Unit to ensure quality teaching and learning in the Islamic schools. Indeed, this is one of the surest ways development can take place in the Muslim communities. Notwithstanding with this, the country is faced with some pockets of spousal murders, religious fanaticism, bribery and corruption, destruction of farmlands, and crossed by nomadic herdsmen, among others, have security implications, which I urge our eminent imams to address at the mosques during their meetings.
Precious Semevo, JoyNews, Sunyai.
Now, former Finance Minister Seth Terkper wants Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to take advantage of the support system available to him to fix the current economic crisis. Ghana is currently struggling to get its debt settled as part of the conditions for a bailout from the IMF amidst resistance from some domestic creditors. Now, speaking on PM Personality Profile with Aisha Ibrahim, Mr. Terkper said though he sometimes felt bad for the minister, he thought the minister was not making maximal use of the finance ministry's support system to deal with the economic challenges.
Below the EMT, Economic Management Team, there's another body called the Economic Policy Coordination Committee, which brings together, directors or chief directors of the Ministry of Finance, Statistical Service, NBPC, Bank of Ghana, governance and whatever. Right. And as deputy, I used to, the minister chairs that, and that's technical. Okay. Right? It's not like EMT or cabinet where you have EMT also because you have, eminent people who have been in various positions from various sectors, right. And then the sectors also came. Okay. So when you have rigorous discussions, and that's where you synthesize a lot of, what is going, on with the economy. So the statistician is telling you, bringing his perspective, the planning people, and so that's another effective tool that we have. So in short, I'm saying the challenges are there, but the support is there. You have development partners. Remember, I spoke about technical assistance. They come and they are sitting behind, like the mission staff for the fund at both the bank and the fund. Their offices here. You are going under so many tensions and whatever, but they are back and looking at what's going on. So in one meeting, 2 meetings, or 2-week mission, they can tell you a lot. Yeah. So you take the stuff, you take the Article 4. Yeah. 2020, I use it a lot. 2019, 2021. It tells us everything about what is going wrong. Right. And we have to just take them, those documents seriously. We are taking some of them seriously. Would we have these challenges? Yes, maybe with COVID and all that, but maybe we could have better them. And also, if you consider that this is the only crisis where we had the most money to manage it. 6 billion, you add our own 2 billion, sovereign bond and others, 3 oil fields. Yeah, there was enough money. Considering that every program that we did, you barely got a billion. Some were just 550, some are 850 million. But we're talking billions of US dollars. So something really, I think that one day we should be able to sit back and see fundamentally what is it that went wrong.
In our next story, some technicians in the Ashanti region have been trained on how to properly dispose of electronic waste to keep the environment clean. It is part of efforts to reduce and effectively manage electronic waste in various communities by avoiding burning, which releases toxic substances into the atmosphere. The Technician Association of Electronics Equipment, Ghana, says the training will significantly help technicians in the electronics industry to protect both the environment and human lives. Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin reports.
A lot of electronic waste being brought to Ghana here. But due to the way the waste was being processed, it created a bad image for Ghanaians, like what happened in Agbogloshi recently. It made it one of the most toxic places on earth. So we came here together to train technicians for them to understand the hazardous parts of electronics and the valuable parts.
According to Jeffrey Adongo, an executive member of the association, technicians can make money while learning how to properly dispose of electrical equipment.
So through the training that is being held here, there are some valuable components in the electronics. So some technicians can store a lot of electronics in their warehouses or in their shops, but they don't know the value in them. So through this training, we teach them that, okay, this component is valuable and you can have an income of such amount. So when you pile it up and you give it to the right channel, you can get money from it. And part of those things are also hazardous. So we also train them on the proper way that they can dismantle them.
The technicians have also been taught to wear their protective equipment
and how they can also take care of their own health. You know, some also do soldering with the lead. They don't put on nose masks. They don't have protective equipment. So it also has adverse effects on their health. So this is to help them and help the environment in general.
Some of the technicians who took part in the training commended the association for making a such significant contribution.
I can give it to some scrap people and take in money, or I can maybe use my own idea to face it out.
Me say omobe say senke aban na say ankran bitimi asum na training etimi ago nationwide ama obia layman kra biti say ya yinim ho hwe no yetimi ehun say no ade bi si o ya ense enye see obi betimi asum na say aban na say ankran bitimi asum ama sa training etimi ago nationwide nke be boy nyina because training I buy me na minim enema bibra na kan na ye but ye ba training we hu say no enema bibra ye ya enye say ye be ye mfanse bia condemn ye be hihye enema bia na say be dispose enema even sometimes so share environment as I say nim the values in sa electronic gadgets are ye use nim no as I say nim the values in that them no. And I say, yeah, no, say just you dispose it that the environment in the more rough near the day.
Today I've learned a lot more from this program. I'm able to learn that there's nothing that it's called disposable. Everything can be recycled. So I learned that the devices that we have used, the old one, we are not supposed to throw it away that way. We are supposed to send it to the proper disposal place, for them to know the pieces, how it's going to help all of us. That's what I've learned. And I also learned that we have electronic waste. All this that we are sending, or whenever that device has spoiled, we are not supposed to throw it away. We have to send it to the recycle processes for them to recycle, for to help us, because everything that we do, when you give it to those that are coming for the, I don't know the English name, but I can say condemn. If you give it to them, maybe if they want to extract the copper, what they do is they burn it. And when they burn it, it gives poisonous gases through the air. And when we all get diseases, airborne diseases, etc. So giving to the right person, that for them not to burn it, but know the right process to extract the valuable and the hazardous one is going to be will help all of us.
A report by Mohammed Nuruddin.
Government has begun the renovation of the 250-year-old Philip Kwakwe Boys School in Cape Coast. The promise by the president to renovate the first school in West Africa was in response to a plea by the Omanhene of the Ogwa traditional area, Osaberima Kwesi Atta, II, during Ghana's Independence Anniversary Parade in Cape Coast. Central Regional Minister Justina Marigold Asan indicated how the completion of the work will be a source of joy to the people of Cape Coast, the Central Region, and the community of tourists. There's more in this report.
Undoubtedly, the history of formal education in West Africa cannot be written without making reference to Philip Kwaku Boys School, as it is the first formal school in the then Gold Coast and the West African sub-region. The school has been in a deplorable state for years now, sparking safety and historical concerns. The beginning of the renovation works comes as a huge relief to residents of Cape Coast who've been waiting for the president to fulfill the promise he made during last year's Independence Day celebration. At a brief ceremony to hand over the site to the contractor for the extensive renovation of the school, Central Regional Minister Justina Marigodasan indicated the start of the project is a dream come true for the people of the Central Region.
In response to a very beautiful request, the Sabere Makwesiata that Ogwamahini told His Excellency the President that he wanted him to support him to renovate Philip Kwaku Boys School. When we are talking about Philip Kwaku Boys School in Cape Coast, we all know the history behind the school. It dates back 250 years ago, which is a long time ago, and the first basic school in the Ghana, I think, even sub-regions. So it's a very huge project. And again, we talk about Central Region being the heartbeat of tourism in the country. So if it has got that history behind the school, then it's so important for His Excellency the President to come in to renovate or rehabilitate the project so that we can add it to the stock of tourist sites that we have in the region. So today, this morning, we are here with the consultant, the contractor, to take possession of the site so that work can go on in earnest.
The contractor for the project, Cynthia J, told JoyNews all is set for the commencement of the project.
The consultant had put in a lot of work. I think the discussion have been going on, drawings have been going on about a year now. Now everything is in place and it's been awarded to us. We are here to work, and we promise that we are going to put in our best and hand over the project in a very short time. Yeah, there's an ICT center, there's a football pitch, there's a modern facility classroom for the school, both Philip Kwaku girls and boys. The timelines is between a year and a half for handing over.
Cape Coast Metro Director of Education, Madam Asante Krobia, revealed that the renovation works are for both the Philip Kwaku boys and girls, and some arrangements have been done for the school pupils so that academic work will not be affected.
But we asked that he should help us with Philip Kwaku boys, and he ended up adding Philip Kwaku girls to it. That shows how he was committed to help us. And so today, once we have started, he had even made a makeshift classroom for the student, for the pupils and the students to move to. So we believe that once we started, it's going to end, and he's saying within 6 months, he's going to hand it over to us. In fact, we know we have a problem with the maintenance culture, but we are pledging that if he has been able to do this for us, we asked for one and he added another one. We know we have more, so we'll do everything possible within our capacity to maintain.
This extensive renovation will restore the age-old glory of the school as the first school in West Africa with the state-of-the-art facilities.
And on that Philip Kwaku note, we wrap the news. Do stay with us. The news review up next. Thank you for staying with us. Time now for us to get into the newspapers. And this morning I have the Daily Graphic, the Ghanaian Times, the Daily Guide, the Finder newspaper, the Ghanaian Publisher, and a host of other newspapers. And this morning we'll be interacting with Afeo Money, former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. He joins us for a conversation. Mr. Money, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Chief.
It's really good to have you. You are the chief. In this equation, you are the chief. But interesting thought, maybe to kickstart the conversation from an indirect point. When you look at journalists today, broadcast and print, from your time in leadership and now your time reflecting upon what we do from afar, maybe, what do you see? We've had the Journalists Without Borders reports and all of that. We've had the perception about journalists. We've had the reports on, how journalists are treated in the country, global reports. But when you look at the quality of journalism in the country, in both the print and broadcast media, what would be your quick reflection on that today?
To be very honest, professionally we are doing so well. Okay. And there are instances of perpetration of mediocrity. But if you strike the balance between the negatives and the positives, I'm inclined to believe that the positives outweigh the negatives. The plurality is taking root. Robust journalism is on ascendancy. On the flip side, we have instances of journalists with all kinds of agendas.
And I was about to come to that, the element of politics, infiltration, and we have so many political bigwigs owning broadcast media entities and print media entities. Your thoughts on that as well as you move on?
This reignites the issue of ownership structure in the media. In the past, the government was perceived as the #1 enemy of press freedom. But since we embraced the ballot box and discarded the bullet course of choosing our leaders in a referendum in 1982, and that opened the doors for liberalization of the media to the extent that we have an explosion of media platforms in the country. What it means is that many people have so many access of information. And we are also seeing a massive invasion of the media space by political actors, political parties, crowding out journalists who are noted for aggressive neutrality, like your network, Joy FM and the Joy FM, JoyNews, and the rest. And as I said, the #1 enemy now is no longer officialdom. Those were the yesteryears, those hellish years when we were shackled by all kinds of laws, like the newspaper licensing law, criminal libel law, and all that. Now, we have to do frontically with the issue of ownership in the media. Ownership confers control and power on whoever invests in the media system. To the extent that we have a situation where some owners are dictating content. And this is a clear danger to press freedom. In state media houses, especially those owned by politicians, you don't have the latitude to use your common sense to work. Professionalism has gone to the dogs. It is what the media owner says, which holds sway over all others. So we need to orchestrate a national conversation on the dangers posed by media ownership. Because it will get to a space, get to a time where almost all media houses will be owned by politicians because they have the means. And businessmen, it's only businessmen, it's only politicians who are invading the media space with alacrity. Also be the business class, because they know that media will build power. And politicians are addicted to two main things, money and power. So when you have money and power, all other things shall be added onto it. So this is what we need to look at. We've been clamoring for this national competition for time immemorial, and this is the time for us to put our together to raise all the issues at a national forum so that we'll see our way clear as far as media freedom is concerned.
The last bit, and just finally, maybe at 40 we can start the conversation with the papers. The last bit I want us to look at on that tangent has to do with the salaries of journalists in this country, print and broadcast. And oftentimes you would hear of how poorly people are paid across the spectrum. When you come to our group, I mean, it's a far more advanced system compared to others, but I'm speaking generally. You go to many places, and when you hear what journalists earn, you would see why sometimes some of them fall prey to corruption from political elements, from other elements, and do stories that shouldn't be done. What is your reflection on that, the remuneration that journalists across the board are given in this country?
There is a direct relationship between the conditions of journalists and their output. It's as simple as that. Journalists who are paid well are less susceptible to fall prey to manipulations by certain forces. Those who are paid abysmally, peanuts, are so vulnerable that they can just take anything to do anything. You know, in some worst case scenarios in Ghana, we have journalists who are not paid at all, and they must survive. As the saying goes, "Man must eat or man must survive," and the survival instinct pushes some of them to criminal height, to the extent that some will malign, some will blackmail, some will dupe, do all kinds of things for the sake of survival. So this prompted the Ghana Journalists Association under my presidency to unionize the association. What it simply means is that we now can serve as intermediaries between our members and their employers, so that in instances of exploitation, we can step in and help save the situation. But the next step after unionization is bargaining power. We are unionizing. The next step was to be in the bracket of Ghana Medical Association and other associations which have the bargaining power to dictate or bargain remunerations which are commensurate with the output of journalists. You know, look, our work is such that we work virtually 24 hours a day. Our working hours are endless. The environment is brusque, and we are faced with all kinds of dangers. So, which means we need to adequately compensate it in line with the work we do. Even when you are home, you'll be thinking of angles, what to do. I believe yesterday you were even thinking of what to do, what angle to take, what agenda to push and all that. So even when you are home, your brains are at work. Others who go to sleep, you work between the hours of 8 and 5, or even less, and go home. And they are assured even better salaries than journalists who work, whose deadlines are endless, working hours incessant. So we need to, and it is sad that journalists most of the time relegate to the background issues concerning them. You know, we tend to pursue, we want to highlight issues of doctors going on strike, others, you know, who are suffering injustice in their workplaces, whilst keeping a blind eye on what we ought to do as journalists to champion our own cause. So there's a need for a reversal of this situation.
Right.
We need to for the back burner from them, in view of the unique role we play, governance, unique role we play in unearthing dark spots and in fighting corruption and others.
Let's, and I couldn't agree with you more. Let's get into the papers now, and the Daily Graphic is where we're starting from. And right there, the deplorable state of Kolebu roads. Interestingly, today we're talking about road networks as well, with a focus on the Tema Motorway. You use that stretch and you have to be really careful because of the different patches in there. We're patching with all kinds of things, and your tires would, I remember some time back being on that stretch and I thought something was wrong with my tires, only to realize that it was the patches that were making the tires sound that way. And I used the stretch very recently. So Kolebu Road's now death trap, and we can also talk about the many or the manifold potholes on the Tema Motorway stretch. Law to speed up trials in the offing, that's according to the Attorney General. IMF deal will conclude in March, President Akufo-Addo says so. And gold for oil plan, NPA to regulate product prices. Let's get into the stories now, starting with the one to speed up trials in the offing. And the Attorney General will soon lay a bill before Parliament for passage into law to help reduce the menace of unjustified delays in criminal trials in the country. Among other things, the bill will seek an amendment of the rules of court to limit the number of interlocutory applications that can be filed during criminal proceedings and make it hard for parties to circumvent the rules of our court to intentionally delay trials. The Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Godfrey Adami, made this known in an exclusive interview with the Daily Graphic. He said the bill was part of a series of initiatives his outfit was undertaking to reform the criminal justice system of the country. Quoting him, he said, "It is very important that we do this reform. Otherwise, our justice system will virtually become a mockery and people will lose confidence in the administration of justice." That's what he said. In the other story on page 16, I'll just take a quick look at them, Mr. Money, and then we can reflect on them together and move away from the Daily Graphic. On page 16, two stories. Ghana is optimistic of concluding the ongoing negotiations with the International Monetary Fund to get the support of the fund by March. This is because the issue surrounding the domestic debt exchange program, one of the requirements, has been, quote, virtually concluded, paving the way for the country to go the full hog. President Akufo-Addo gave this assurance when he held discussions with the visiting German Federal Minister of Finance, Christian Lindner, last Friday at the Jubilee House in Accra. He said the main concerns of the government included the process of concluding talks with the IMF, as well as the specific assistance that would help Ghana fast-track the process of its economic recovery. Mr. Money, I think I'll pause here and then do the last two stories after you're done reflecting on these two. So the IMF and then hastening the justicial process in terms of court processes. Any quick reactions before we go on?
We don't need any superfluity of evidence to conclude that the IMF rescue package like oxygen. That survival will be next to impossible. So we need to do whatever is possible within our means, whatever strength we need to pull, whatever negotiations we need to intensify to get the almighty bailout. We are inclined to believe that Ghana is a darling boy of the United Nations, the Paris Club, the West in general, and we can serve a wave of optimism to state that even without a successful conclusion of the domestic debt exchange program, Ghana will leverage its darling boy status, its creditors, to secure the much expected, much needed IMF bailouts by the target date. Aside the example of Tanzania, Tanzania secured its IMF bailouts without concluding its domestic exchange program. So as we speak, Tanzania is also struggling with how to restructure its domestic debt. So we can draw inspiration from what is happening in Tanzania and add it to our special statistics, added to the goodwill we have with the Caribbean nations. One can conclude that the IMF bailout is coming. So this doesn't mean that we should right roughshod on so domestic bondholders, we need to salute most profusely national heroes like Senya Husi and others who are leading the fight against injustice, being meted or attempt to mete out injustices to domestic bondholders. Whilst we hear conflicting reports, conflicting stories, narratives from the government, specifically Ministry of Finance. One break, we hear that there will be no haircuts for domestic bondholders, and a deputy minister will come out to dispute what his own minister has said, and the next day you hear something from certain sources, also pouring water on what had already been said. But the good news is that we reached far in the negotiations, apart from the salary agreement. So many backdoor negotiations have been done to the extent that one can hopefully state emphatically that the IMF loan will come. But we also need to emphasize that it is not a panacea to all our problems. Many experts believe that what we are going through is self-inflicted. We went on a borrowing and spending binge. We willfully crossed the line of sustainability to the extent that our economy is now on the ropes. The cost of living is vitally bitter, and citizens are feeling the heat. So all this reinforces the need for our negotiators to fast track whatever is being done to ensure that the bailouts lands, the cash lands in the accounts of Bank of Ghana as soon as practicable. On Kolebu is so strategic in terms of her delivery. And 1 minute delay can cause the death of a patient. And potholes can just hinder your acceleration when you are driving. And we have a situation where our major roads are littered with potholes, and in some instances,
right.
And you need to take care, because the lives of the drivers, the lives of caregivers are also important. Under no circumstances will they sacrifice their lives for others. So we are urging the authorities to face the Kolebu roads with urgent promptitude, so that lives will be saved, and it also gives some facelift to such an important facility like Kolebu. And I know the other issue you raised was about.
So you've addressed the first two of them. Of course, there was a bit about Kolebu and the IMF, which you have discussed. There was also the bit about the law to speed up trials in the offing. I don't know whether you have a quick reflection on that.
An old maxim holds that justice delayed is justice denied. Right. And we have a litany of instances where cases have run in decades. And we also know that it's a fact that some judges, under the influence of some litigants, will unduly delay cases. And this inflicts on the litigants. So I'm happy that the Attorney General has seen the need to speed up such cases in order to bring relief to the litigants and also cut down the cost of litigation. This is a step right there.
Let's go to page 20 for the final story from the Daily Graphic and newspaper and quickly get into others. Gold for Oil plan, NPA to regulate product prices, and to ensure that the prices of petroleum products imported under the Gold for Oil program reflect at the pumps to benefit consumers. The National Petroleum Authority will regulate the prices of the products in the interim until the volumes increase significantly. In addition, the NPA will work with the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company Limited to negotiate prices with international oil traders to ensure that the landed cost of products procured under the program is always competitive. A statement from the NPA said the price at which BOST would sell the products to bulk import, distribution and export companies, which we call the BIDEX, would be approved by the NPA. And that, quote, the price at which the BIDEX will sell the products to oil marketing companies will also be approved by the NPA. I remember a few days ago reading about how GOIL, the state-owned oil marketer, had claimed that, on the back of the 20% gold for oil that had come into the country, they were reducing their prices of diesel, but not of petrol. And there have also been comments about what this would mean, for example, if we could have not 20%, but 50%, 70%, 100% of our consumption in the country. But there's the other side of the conversation, Afil Money, where we seem to be getting oil. In fact, we are getting, the first batch was from Russia, not from the UAE. And then there have been concerns about whether it was really gold we exchanged for the oil or we paid hard cash. Some have said that the dynamics surrounding this are not too clear, that the value of gold and all of that could come back to haunt us. What is your quick reflection on this?
Hopes were raised vertiginously, only for them to be touched with this gold for oil deal. We were told or made to understand that prices of petroleum products were to be reduced significantly as a result of the gold for oil deal. The first concernment came. What we rather saw was an increase in the prices of petroleum products. And this naturally ignited questions about the veracity of the deal, whether we're not being taken for granted by certain people, by politicians again. Many people concluded that it was a case of flattery to deceive.
Right.
We're flattered only for us to be deceived. We're flattered to the extent that now you go to filling stations and you buy petroleum products at very reduced prices. And you rightly said that there are lingering issues about the whole deal. One school of thought is that it's to be sent to Parliament in order to be subjected to the much needed scrutiny. There are so many dark areas which ought to be examined. The public, under the right to know law, the public had the right. It's not largely to tell Ghanaians how their gold is being used and how much they deserve to pay for their petroleum prices. So all this calls for transparency. So we need to heighten our game of transparency as far as the gold for oil deal is concerned.
Right.
I'm glad that the MP has come in. I believe Mustafa Hamid will infuse this high sense of dynamism into this whole deal. So while we buy petroleum products at cheaper prices comparatively, the public will be apprised adequately about the genuineness of the deal, so they all buy into it.
Right. Let's get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Gold for oil deal, fuel prices to reduce by March. That's according to the MPA. The story is on page 13. Parliament reconvenes tomorrow. And there's also Adregano land dispute. Top Kings Limited, Nungwa Stool rightful owners. That's according to Benjamin Akakpo. President Akufo-Addo accepts resignation of Chieftaincy Minister, appoints Dan Boche as caretaker minister. Sad development there. We've known about some of the surrounding issues and the president has accepted his resignation, appointing Dan Botry as caretaker minister. Military restores come to Mami Krobo after averting reprisal on nomadic herdsmen. We have reprisal attack here, but editor of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, a reprisal is, a return attack, so you don't need attack there. It's interesting because I heard on the BBC of all places, someone saying reprisal attack. Anyway, so let's get into those stories, starting with the one on page 13. The National Petroleum Authority has assured the public that the Gold for Oil, that is the G4O initiative, will meet 50% of the country's oil demands by March 2023. According to the NPA, this would lead to lower ex-pump prices in the country. There's also this story that I'd like us to quickly get into on page 4. So Parliament will reconvene tomorrow to commence the first meeting of the third session of the 8th Parliament of the Republic. A commencement instrument signed by the Speaker of Parliament, Albert Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, appointed Parliament House Accra as the venue and 10 o'clock afternoon as the time for the first sitting of the meeting. The recall is in line with Article 112 of the 1992 Republican Constitution. During the 10-week meeting, the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, would be expected to deliver a message on the state of the nation pursuant to Article 67 of the Constitution. Quick reflections: fuel prices to reduce by March, but we've seen an uptick again. They've gone close to 16 cedis. We're paying 13 cedis something. Now they're going close to 16 again. And the hard currencies are beating our currency one more time. And then this bit about Parliament reconvening. Quickly, what would be your assessment of our 8th Parliament as of this point? How do you think we have fared?
To be fair, and to be honestly brutally honest, the 8th Parliament, to a very large extent, has lived up to expectation. I believe because of the hand nature of the representations of MPP and NDC. The two main parties are equally matched, and this has brought a semblance of fairness in debate, a semblance of seriousness in how they tackle their issues, as compared to previous parliament, where one parliament had dominance over the other, one party had dominance over the other. We also had debates were conducted. Parliament was reduced to a rubber stamp. Everything from executive received automatic endorsement because the opposition lacked the numbers to argue, let alone halt the imposition of all kinds of policies, of all kinds of laws on the good people of Ghana because of the weak numbers of the opposition. The 8th Parliament changed the scenario, the dynamics, different, and this inured to a democracy. So if our democracy is robust, more robust than what it used to be, credit must be given to Parliament, that the leadership of the opposition is standing up to dictatorial tendencies on the parts of the majority. Naturally, Parliament from tomorrow will be the spotlight of national or even international attention because of the exciting or interesting precedent over the leadership of the minority group in particular. We were made to understand by one of the factions in the minority that the changes or the changes effected by the NDC are yet to take place because the Speaker is yet to communicate same to the House. In other words, we are told that the changes are final and that we see a new crop of leaders when Parliament resumes tomorrow. So it will be an interesting scenario. I believe that we see battery of journalists more than ever before. The number will rise higher than what we used to see because of the juicy angles, juicy news angles, which Parliament will hopefully provide tomorrow. So we expect our people to go there and inform the people accordingly about development in Parliament. I believe some will sensationalize as they usually do, and some will be objective. But in the name of professionalism, we expect journalists to paint the picture as it is from tomorrow in Parliament, so that we all follow and then take the right decisions based on reporters will tell us. And back to the assurance that petroleum prices will reduce from as a result of vote for oil deal. And the irony is that prices are rather rising. So as you speak, GPRTU is meeting to adjust prices upward. And this will also inflate additional hardship to commuters who need transport, public transport, to get to their places of work. So this should be done. We expected NPA, please, in the name on behalf of the suffering masses, do what is practically possible. Ensure that prices of petroleum products are reduced because of the rippling effect of such increases on the livelihoods of the people.
Mr. Modi, we have to go in just about a minute and a half. I'll summarize some of the stories we'll look at. Daily Guide, Tender Committee queries GRA on ITAS contract. There's Nana Lobby's Paris Club to help restructure debt, the G20, among others. Asante Akim Central, NPP boils. There's also the Finder newspaper, $700 million second gas processing plant to be completed within 24 months. I'm sure you've heard of that commitment. And you can also read about the Gold for Oil program explained in 14 points. We have a similar story on myjoyonline.com where you can get a complete analysis of what it is. Premix fuel subsidy hits 264.8 million Ghana cedis last year. This one I'd like you to take a quick look at. It is Alan's time, Omanhene of Goso says so, and the campaign of leading contender for the ruling governing New Patriotic Party flag bearer race, Kwejo Alan Shemating, has received a major boost from the paramount chief of the Traditional Council in the Ahafo region. There's also Ablakwa tramples on court documents as Reverend Kusi Boateng secures restraining order. I don't know whether you've seen the video, but he is accosted. He refuses to take the court summons, so to speak, and then he basically kicks it aside. Any quick reflections on these two stories? And that is how we'll conclude with the news review.
Honorable Ablakwa is a lawmaker, so one is inclined to believe that he will obey the laws of the land in line with his status, vociferous status as a lawmaker. We are governed by laws, and we are not in a jungle, so we expect the laws to be respected. And I believe he has consulted the lawyers on how to navigate the waters in which he finds himself. And at the end of it all, the law must be respected. Otherwise, you'll be setting a bad example for others who have lesser or no regard for our laws. And the issue involving Ablakwa and Reverend Kusi Boateng is so interesting. But he deserves credit for his crusading role in unearthing what is happening in the National Secretariat of the Cathedral. And I believe if the case, Shrag is going into the issue, and we also urge Shrag to come out as soon as possible to help bring finality to the whole matter. It is interesting to know that the spikes are out and the race is effectively on for the MPP flag bearership. And like Chiramantin seems to have taken the lead in the race to secure the title to run as presidential candidate of MPP. So far, one would say so far so good for him. Others have also announced their intention to contest the flag bearership. The other day it was Apreku, and who never said that spirit prompted me to jump into the fray. But it will be interesting to see how Alan will square it out with the vice president, who has not given up at all his intention to also take presidential power. And Japan is also causing waves. And the analysts will tell him never write him out. Not at all, because he has grassroots support, and the grassroots will keep faith with him. And this can cause a dent in the fortunes of both Alan and Vice President Boamia. So it's interesting to see how all this will pan out.
Right. Well,
in the name of that, we expect them to play it fair and not go the British way.
Thank you so much, Mr. Money, for engaging us this morning. And I am particularly grateful for your reflections on journalism in the country at the start of the review. We wish you the best of the day, sir.
God bless you and your viewers.
And that's former president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Afil Money, joining us for a conversation. Up next, we serve you sports on the AM show. And after that, we get into our big stories. Don't you forget, we're talking about the domestic debt exchange program and the poor state of our roads with a focus on the Tema Motorway. But for now, let's settle for sports. Welcome back on the AM show, and after sports we get into those hard matters of a national scope, starting with the domestic debt exchange program. So government last week extended the deadline for the domestic debt exchange program to tomorrow, February the 7th. The Finance Ministry says it has reached a number of agreements with some stakeholders. It also said discussions were being finalized with organized labor and pension fund trustees on a separate arrangement in accordance with the Memorandum of Understanding with organized labor on December the 22nd last year, and in line with government's debt exchange program. We've got that on our table today as we join our guests, Professor John Gachi, Dean, UCC School of Business, and Dr. Patrick Esuming, lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Let's start with Dr. Patrick Esuming, who joins the conversation now. Dr. Esuming, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and good morning to viewers. Thanks for having me again.
It's good to have you. It's been a while. It's only last week I was talking about the fact that we hadn't had an interaction in a while. And this Monday, we've been blessed with your brains on our show. But let's start with your quick summary thoughts on how far we've come when it comes to the debt exchange program and what it's looking like from where you sit.
Okay. So I think, first of all, we definitely started the debt exchange on the wrong footing. The way we've gone about shifting deadline, changing terms, just tells you that we didn't start with the proper engagement that we started with. So it looks like we are coming around to maybe how we should have started it in the first place.
Okay.
Given the category of stakeholders the government has reached agreement with, you get the sense that they are getting pretty close to bringing the domestic debt exchange to a conclusion.
Okay, so from where you said conclusivity is just around the corner.
Yes, it seems to me that they are getting close to, getting the minimum 80% that they set themselves before, they can finalize the program.
Having given us those initial thoughts, we will then look at the different dynamics that have come to play. Some of these postponements have been on the back of the fact that some members, some of those who were expected to participate willingly, refused to do so, from the pension fund holders to individual bond holders. It's been quite a stream. And now it would appear that we're coming to some conclusion to this matter. But do you feel the 80%? It would appear we're getting the 80% or have already reached that. And some have said if we get to that point, we do not necessarily need all the others to come on board to make it 90+% or even 100%. Government, on the other hand, has said that if you stay away from this, the old bonds would not be treated the same as the new bonds. There could be consequences. How do you react to that? And is that the best way we can address the situation?
Yeah, well, first of all, you see, you get the sense. I don't think the way it's being communicated, making it seem like there will be dire consequence for you if you don't sign up. It seems like blackmailing people to sign up. I think people have genuine concern about not wanting to sign up. We have to understand, we talk about these numbers and percentages and categories, but we have to understand that these are people's lives and livelihoods. Some people have worked all their lives, saved money, and then all of a sudden they are being asked to take some substantial reduction in the value of their wealth. So I think that degree of hesitancy, should be understood. And in my view, what the government should be doing is trying to a bit more persuade and then also try to meet people halfway. It seems like it's softening it down from the very beginning and try to meet, some people some of the way. But I think the whole idea of trying to sort of indirectly threaten people to sign up is not, it doesn't seem ideal to me. On the other hand, from their point of view, you have to understand that if people sign on, and obviously they are going to take a cut to the value of their wealth, and then those who don't sign on are seen to get all their monies back without any loss. I think those who sign on will somewhat feel they'll be cheated. So it's a tricky balance, but I don't think the way that we are going in terms of trying to scare people by saying there will be no secondary trading of your old bonds and trying to scare people to sign on. I'm not sure that's the best approach.
You don't think that is the best approach, but looking at the fact that government has certain requirements, at least from its end, because some have said that it doesn't necessarily need even 80% participation, that it can do with far less. And then you look at the examples of Jamaica and other countries and you realize that it took quite a bit of time. In this instance, we're going very quickly and we're going big in terms of the impact this would have on others. But recently, we've heard of certain new dynamics that have come to play where pension holders, for example, are going to get more in terms of the bonds, in terms of what they would have ordinarily got. There are different dynamics to it. If you've seen the tweaked version that the Finance Ministry has put forward, does that give you more comfort? And is that something that subscribers should be more willing to go along with?
I mean, these are certainly improved terms from the previous ones we had. I think whether it gives subscribers more comfort, I'm not too sure. I think it's always seemed like we know we are in a difficult situation and changes have to be made. One of the difficulties that the government has had is, people look at how we got here and how we are trying to resolve it. And there's a clear sense that there's an imbalance in terms of the distribution of the burden. And I think that's the difficulty the government has had. And, you know, I tend to be very sympathetic of people who feel that way, because we cannot, yes, we are going to do the debt exchange, and definitely some cuts and some losses should be taken. But we feel that the government hasn't done enough to change the way it runs its business, to warrant asking people to make those kind of sacrifices. So while the current terms are much improved and soften some of the pain, it still doesn't change the fact that, I mean, as an economist, I don't think the government has done enough to change the way it runs its finances, to bring enough comfort. Because, yes, you know, doing this debt exchange is going to bring our debt to GDP ratio down substantially. But we have to understand that if we haven't sealed the hole that feeds into the debt to GDP, and I don't think we have, based on what the budget that has been presented, the medium-term framework that has been presented, I haven't seen enough to suggest that we have sealed the hole to prevent us from getting here in the near future. And when people are going to make those kind of hefty sacrifices, they deserve the right to see substantial change, so that you know that in the near term we are not coming back here. So yes, there's been some improvement. I think now maybe what people should be demanding is more fiscal adjustment, also on the part of the government. Not just so that we'll be able to close the debt exchange, but to ensure that going forward, government finances are sound and that we are not going to return to the situation we are currently in.
Is that practical, though? I mean, we've seen this flip-flop over the years. In fact, over the decades. This isn't the first time we're going to the IMF. And even within this Fourth Republic, the number of times we've gone, we always go back to square one. We approach the IMF, we tailor things to suit what they require, and then right after we get out of the woods, so to speak, we return to our old reckless ways, and then we end up here. Maybe in this instance, the most reckless we've seen. But two things I want us to look at. One, when it comes to the individual bondholders, the proposal that has been pushed through by the Finance Ministry is that those below 59 years would now get a coupon of 10% over 5 years, and for retirees, they would get an extra 5% to 15% over the same 5 years. How do you think that will work out? Is it appropriate? And just to tie in, because you brought in the domestic debt exchange, when you look at 2022 and you look at our total debt of 467.4 billion, and you look at 2022 and the 575.7 billion, which is 93% of GDP when you add the 108 billion in 2 months. Our projection, because we're looking at our debt portfolio versus the previous year's GDP, sums it up to 123.6% of GDP. What do you think the real impact of the DDEP will be on our debt to GDP ratio? So the first one having to do with the maturity, the coupons, 10%, 15% for individual bondholders below 59, and the other one for retirees. And the second, because you brought up the debt to GDP portfolio, what impact really? You say it will cut it down by a lot. By how much, do you think?
Okay. So let's start with the first one. I think, you know, obviously the government has listened to the cries, especially of the pensioners, people who are just on the verge of going for pension, and they're losing a substantial chunk of their money. So I think that decision is the right one.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure the pensioners would have preferred that they are completely excluded. But at the very minimum, this was sort of pushing them, because you wake up and suddenly 2023, whatever you are expecting, nothing is coming. I think that one was a little bit hard to take. So on that score, I think you have to give the finance ministry some credit for listening and at least doing something. They seem to be doing something to soften the pain and the burden. issue about what the debt exchange is going to do to our GDP, debt to GDP ratio, I think, in some sense, maybe, I don't know whether it's for statistic reasons, the finance ministry has not clearly indicated how much we are even going to pay in total from the DDE for you to get a precise sense. And don't forget that the original computations that we had, that says that by 2028, our debt to GDP will go under 55. I'm sure that has somewhat changed because that was based on the initial terms that were put out. But as the terms have been softened and changed, that computation will change. The other thing is, the foreign component of our debt, because the currency depreciates quite a lot, it could change dramatically. So I think the precise nature of what this DGE has to be having, how much it will bring our debt to GDP ratio down, we will probably do more than the 55% that we expected. But what is helpful is also, there are different elements. The debt service ratio, which is the fraction of our foreign exchange earnings that goes to, or the foreign interest payment as a ratio of our foreign exchange earnings. I think that because when we finish, we are not going to be making the same sort of annual payment. That part will come down. So I think on that score, it will lessen the burden of the debt. So in terms of the precisely what you do to debt to GDP, it's difficult to estimate because some of the variables keep changing. But you think that you probably get down close to 50% or so. But this has to be seen as a continuous process. As we take more measures, we take measures to also revive the economy, not just dealing with the debt.
Right.
Because don't forget that the denominator is the GDP. And if the nominal GDP is growing, it's going to also help bring the debt to GDP ratio down.
Let's contemplate our fiscal record. Let's put matters into perspective because you've also said that we would likely end up back here again if we don't get some dynamics right as far as retooling our economy. You look at the unsustainability of our debt stock, what I was pointing to earlier, and you would realize that as of January 2022, our debt stock stood at 371.7 billion Ghana cedis. But look at how it ballooned by November 2022, 575.7 billion. You look at the add-ons, about 180 billion thereabouts. The domestic component, 193.1 billion, and the external, 382.1 billion. Then you factor in all the other dynamics. Inflation in 2021 was 12.6%. Now it's 54.1%. Our gross international reserves stood at $9.7 billion. Now it's $6.2 billion. Import cover has fallen from 2021, 4.4 months, to now 2.7 months. And our balance of payment, like I've mentioned, we had a surplus in 2021. Now we have a negative component or a deficit of 3.6 billion. Add all of that to the fact that our import bill has also risen instead of declined. What picture does that paint in terms of the feasibility, the practicality, the reality of changing anything, even within and outside of this IMF deal, if we get it?
Okay. So, yes, you rightly mentioned that we've been to the IMF many times. But we have to understand that this particular case, I'm sure this is the worst we have been for a long time. And because this is the first time we've been frozen out of international capital markets, and also the extent of our indebtedness is so severe that more drastic action should be taken. What this should have done is to cause us to think more broadly than just doing a debt exchange. To actually decide that no, all the things that we keep complaining that we will change in terms of the structure of the economy, in terms of the the structure of government finances in terms of how the economy runs, our overdependence on foreign finances. So I think this is where a broader discussion involving a wider range and a bigger cross-section of Ghanaians would have been helpful. So Ghanaians as a whole, it's like we've come to a threshold and we are going to think about how we want to remodel and retool our economy going forward. I don't think that has been done, even though the finance ministry has, and the IMF has said that as part of the current program, we are going to restructure the economy. Restructuring the economy takes a lot more than that. And because of the previous commitments and promises that we are going to do same and we haven't done, you want to see something dramatically different from what we have done in the past before you really put your money on the fact that we're going to do something differently. And then the other thing is, those changes require Ghanaians as a whole, public sector, private sector, people to make adjustments in the way we live and where we buy from and what we buy. I don't think those discussions have gone far and wide enough. The government has also received, through the individual bondholders, it received a lot of important suggestions about the way to reform government finances. Even though the finance ministry seems to be saying the right thing in terms of how it will approach that, you get the sense that once this debt exchange is finalized, all of those will be thrown out of the window. And there won't be any real commitment. So the short answer to your question is that, yes, it looks daunting. And this is where you need a broader-based mobilization of Ghanaians around whatever program we are going to have, so that we see that we are making investments in our own future for the long term, that going forward, you won't see the kind of difficulties that we have. I don't think that has been done yet. And, unfortunately, just fostering a domestic debt exchange from Ghanaians, it will temporarily reduce our debt to GDP. But like I said, the tap that builds up the debt has not been closed yet. And therefore, any measure to reduce the size of the pool in the basin, yes, it will bring it down. But as long as the tap keeps flowing in, at some point, it will go back up. And that's exactly how I see the debt exchange.
Hold for me, Dr. Suming. Let me bring in Professor John Gachi, Dean at the UCC School of Business. Prof, a very good morning to you. You may have to unmute, Professor Gachi.
Yeah, good morning.
It's a pleasure having you join the conversation. Just to give you some fair idea of what has been happening, not that you are not aware of it, we started with this debt exchange proposal. We gave our first deadline, December the 19th, actually, and that was rolled over to December the 30th of last year, then January the 16th, then pushed to January the 31st, and now we have February the 7th as the latest deadline, which actually is tomorrow. If you look at the new deadline that has been given, individuals are now being told they are free to participate or not, but that old bonds may have limited tradability, which could mean consequences in very simple terms. And there are final discussions ongoing with organized labor and the pensions fund trustees, some of which we've got wind of. When you look at how far we've come or not come as far as this entire enterprise is concerned, what for you have been the positives so far, some of which we've spoken of, and the negatives that still linger? Let's start off the conversation from there with you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think largely the deadline have been shifted over and over again just because government has not met the threshold. The threshold that was announced is supposed to be 80%. So if you announce a debt exchange program that you are not able to get the buy-in of the majority, then that is not good enough. And I believe that is the reason why the goalposts have been shifted over and over again. But that has led to some engagement, and that is a positive side. That has led to some engagement, and the engagement resulted in some payment of coupon of about 5% across board in 2023. and restructuring of the entire debt profile to now have about 12 different types of bonds, having about 9% effective coupon rate. Also, some impediment regarding the legal backing to government, to the extent that government can change the terms of the bond over time, have been taken off. Then again, some other issues proper. The issue relating to the banking sector, resulting in GATT involvement in the whole debt exchange program. When we are talking about the banks relating to the regulator, I think the regulator has all that it takes to provide liquidity support. No external third party can come in to provide that liquidity support. And the debt exchange program should not be used as a vehicle for some other entity to make equity inroad into the banks. And that has been a thorny issue. I'm not clear whether the local banks have signed. I'm aware that 8 international banks or foreign banks have signed, largely because those foreign banks, they know that they will not go to the Bank of Ghana for liquidity support, for which they will allow GATT to make investment in them. So there are some positives, because now the attitude of the finance minister has changed a bit, and it's accommodating. But as to whether the individual bondholders are satisfied by the new deal, will have to be expressed by them. Because if you're expecting about 19% coupon and you are giving 5%, whether the 5% will be enough to cater for your needs or not, you have to express that. But some positive development have taken place, and some negative have also come up and ought to be cleared.
Just a quick one. We've spoken to a number of people on this threshold of 80% that has been pegged by the Finance Ministry. Do we need 80%?
Well, I do not think that we need, since it's voluntary. But on the other hand, you need majority to buy into the debt exchange program. So if you go for some majority, that is okay. But 80% means that you are trying as much as possible to haul in as many as you can, and that is problematic. So, for example, pension funds are still not happy with the deal, so they have not signed. Individual bondholders are not happy with the deal, so they have not signed. So, as to whether the 80% will be met or not, I am not aware of the figures. But this is something that is voluntary. So if it is voluntary, the people must voluntarily accept to be part of it. If not so, then that is a failure.
Let's look at some other dynamics that come up. So there's going to be a meeting tomorrow, but ahead of that meeting, we've heard the president announce that by March, we should actually have this hurdle cleared and an IMF deal likely in place. We've also seen him interact recently with the German entourage, talking about the fact that, urging them, in fact, to encourage China, an ad hoc member of the G20, the Paris Club, to actually be willing to help us in our debt restructuring. How do you think that is going to play out? And that question is for both of you. How do you think that is going to play out in this scenario? I'll start with you, Professor Gachi.
Well, I think debt exchange program is on the debt. So it has to be on the domestic debt and foreign component of the debt. Now we know some level of debt exchange program is going on domestically. So it is now the turn to caught the attention of our international creditors. And some of the debt are such that you will need to talk to some partners to accede to the request. What I know is that the government is in contact with G7 to compel members to understand the situation of Ghana and comply. So I believe that is on the account of which he was calling on China and the Germans to coerce or to try to talk to China to come to the table. And in any case, for external debt, you cannot on your own impose a debt restructuring on them, because that can have devastating consequences. But I think in the year 2001, the G7, the Paris Club, they talked to themselves and they were able to provide something that helped the debt management of the country.
Right.
They provided debt forgiveness, etc. So it is something that can be done.
Okay. For you, Dr. Suming, on that same point, and then we'll wrap with a final point I want us to look at.
I think we are definitely going to need some assistance of both our bilateral and multilateral partners for the foreign component of our debt.
Okay.
I'm not an expert in international relations and all, but I think that what my expectation would have been that we engage quietly and privately with all those partners, and not necessarily do it publicly, to the sense of asking other nations to help bring some pressure or control to bear. But I guess the president knows what he's doing. I think, one of the things that I've found
the way you sound when you say the president knows what he's doing, do you think it was rash to put this out there like that by March this will be in place and all of that? Was it too hasty?
I think, given how we have struggled with the domestic component and the kind of changes and postponement, I think I would have hesitated to put those kind of deadlines out there and put more pressure on ourselves. I think, I would have, in essence, I wouldn't have done it that way. I would have just go behind the scenes, talk to people, try to encourage others, try to also plead for others to understand the difficulty we are in and to help out, and not necessarily putting out deadlines. I think in this particular debt, the president has made statement that sometimes his information minister and the finance ministry have found it necessary to come and clarify. And then when that happens, I don't think that's very good. When the president of the land speaks, you expect that is it, and that it shouldn't be necessary for someone to come and clarify what the president was saying. So, in my sense, this is something that falls in one of those categories where you do your consultations quietly behind it, and then when you are ready to mention this, then it means that you really have your hands on the date.
My very final bit to both of you, and you can add your concluding comments to them. The buck stops with Ken Ofori-Atta, doesn't it? The finance minister. And the banking sector is going to face some consequences, looking at the billions involved that will be impacted by this domestic debt exchange. The members of the defunct banks and other financial institutions network, DEBOFIN as they call themselves, are calling for the removal of Ofori-Atta and claiming he threatens Ghana's long-term financial stability. So what they say is that his actions resulted in the collapse of the banking sector, as they put it, and they are also saying that with what they are seeing as far as the domestic debt exchange is concerned, it is not going to pan out well for the banks and financial institutions. People are still calling for the head of Ken Ofori-Atta. What would you say to such people? I'll start with you, Dr. Suming.
I think that, it's definitely a legitimate concern when you look at what this debt exchange will do to the strength and the viability of the bank. Don't forget that we still haven't finished paying the over 21 billion and counting that we spent cleaning up the sector. And then, you know, we have to deal with it. So I think the impact of this program on the debt, I mean, on the strength of the banking sector in particular, is going to be massive. We don't know how long it will take for the bank to really get to the level of strength they were before. So, as for the question about calling for his head, I mean, I guess people have the right to, you know, say, has he performed well? No. In terms of what we have done with the management of the economy in the last couple of years, and then what has happened to the banking system, has he performed well? I don't think so. Should he be fired? I guess that's a decision for the president to make. But I guess people also have the right to express, you know, their disquiet about the way the economy has been handled. I think that one
a bit of a tricky follow-up, but I mean, I'm just going to put it to you, gentlemen. If you were the president, Dr. Esuming and Professor Gachi, with everything that has happened, would you now sack, or would you have sacked Ken Ofori-Atta by now?
Okay, well, is that me first?
Dr. Esuming first.
I think if I would have removed the finance minister, I would have done it months ago. Once he has been kept and he has been in the middle of this debt exchange, I think it's a little bit tricky now in the middle to remove him. If he had to be removed, I think should have done before we started going to the IMF, simply because he had been adamant that we should not be going to the IMF. So the point that we are making a decision to go to the IMF, if he had to be removed, I think that's the point that he should have been removed, and not where we are at this present moment.
Dr. Esuming, grateful for your time with us this morning, and we wish you the best of the day. Dr. Patrick Esuming is with the University of Ghana Business School. Professor Gachi, you have the final bite on those two quick points. Debofin says he should be let go of, and if you were Mr. President, what would you have done in this situation?
Well, I think we need to look at the effect of this debt exchange program on the financial sector. Now, even the 5% that is given in coupon will not be able to correct the books. There will be liquidity challenges. There will be capital erosion. Dividend will not be paid for a long time. And now GATS may be having incursion into equity arrangement with the banks. That is a destabilizing factor that will have to be looked at. So if you look at all these things, the banking sector and the financial sector doesn't look good within the short term to medium term. That is a concern. I think when you are managing an economy, you have goodwill. You get to the point that the goodwill is exhausted. The goodwill has exhausted, and all that people say is that the main problem of this economy is Ken Ofori-Atta. So on that score, the president would have done some good to this economy by replacing him, so that the person who comes in will have some goodwill to receive the support of Ghanaians in managing the economy. But as it is now, people don't see the goodwill there, and people see a wicked architecture being inflicted upon their investment, being inflicted upon their entrepreneurial engagement, and that doesn't augur well for the economy.
Thank you very much, Prof. So in this instance, I don't know whether you've given me an answer. What would you have done?
That already, the goodwill is lost. Some, at least from the beginning of 2022, the goodwill is lost. That was the time that he has to be removed, but the president gave so many reasons. And he's at post.
So basically, if you are at the helm of affairs, you would have removed him long before now. That's the point.
Oh, yeah, that's the point.
Okay.
That's the point.
Professor Agachi,
the goodwill is just not there.
Thank you, Professor Agachi, for joining the conversation. Professor Agachi is Dean of the UCC School of Business. Well, that's how we conclude the conversation on the Domestic Debt Exchange Program. But there's more coming your way as we talk about the state of our roads, specifically the Tema stretch, the Tema Motorway. And interestingly, I used that stretch just over a week ago, and I was reflecting on some of the bumps and all of that. And today we have a conversation on that. Some of those potholes we see there. Interestingly, today as well, we saw the Kolebu stretch, the daily graphic highlighting it. Some of the accidents we have on our way actually can be avoided. All those conversations still to come on the AM show. Do stay.
A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for staying here on the AM show. It's now time for us to focus our lenses on the Accra-Tema Motorway. The highway has many life-threatening potholes, and the streetlights there are non-functioning, and it makes driving very unsafe. Watch this piece by Michael Ashale, and after that, we'll speak to persons who have concerns as well and who can speak to the issues at hand.
The Accra-Tema stretch of the N1 highway, also known as the Accra-Tema Motorway, is a crucial link for Ghana and the West African sub-region. The road connects Ghana to other countries such as Nigeria, Benin, Burkina Faso and the Ivory Coast, and is a major route for Ghana's exports to the sub-region. However, this stretch of the N1 highway is becoming increasingly dangerous due to poor road maintenance.
More than this. Death trap. It's too much. They have to really come and construct the road. It's a death trap.
Right.
Because look at it. You can't call this. You can't call these potholes. So you can't call these potholes. And we pay a tax, so they have to come and resolve it for us.
The motorway is notoriously known for some of the heart-wrenching accidents in the country, and the road is getting more dangerous by the day.
My name is Noah Tekpe. The road is very, very bad. We are suffering in this road because they are not doing the maintenance. I'm passing here every day. The potholes and the things is very bad. So we are begging the president so that they fix the road for we. We are suffering in this motorway.
The speed limit on the motorway is 100 kilometers per hour. With the potholes, drivers are forced to slow down to avoid destroying their vehicles. In the process, they create congestion on the road.
Charlie, the traffic is too much on the motorway. Right, yeah. No, there's a lot of potholes on the way, so you have to do something about it.
These potholes are not only an inconvenience for drivers, but for passengers as well.
Sabi, I can't wait so I pay for fast so I are for fast so ministers in MPs in fast so.
Nearly everyone uses the road, including those going to health facilities, pregnant women and workers.
So, now we should send a motorway from here to Accra. So bad. Waste problem.
The road is terrible. I sometimes have waist pains. It's either I'm in a long traffic or jumping into potholes, and no one seems to care. It should be fixed.
But at the end of the day, you won't benefit also.
At night, the motorway is plunged into total darkness. On our drive up and down the entire stretch of the motorway, we observe that but for a few areas, the entire motorway is without light, even though there are street lights along the stretch. More than half of all the street lights are not functional. Some are without their cables, whereas others are without bulbs. Drivers will not see the danger lurking in the corner until it's too late. Since 2009, there have been more than 10 promises to rehabilitate or expand the motorway. From Amidu Amin Sulemana,
we have to do an engineering studies on the road and see possibly what it will cost. And the public-private partnership, there are a lot of things studies that you must do.
To former Roads Minister Joe Gidisu and even former President John Dramani Mahama.
If we achieve a huge expansion of Tema Port and we have a constraint of the roads leading to the port, then we would virtually have done nothing. And so the combination of the road to the expansion of the port is something that I appreciate very much.
The MPP government promised to expand the road to 10 lanes.
Mr. Speaker, under the Ministry of Roads and Highways Public-Private Partnership Program for Road Infrastructure, the design, build, finance, operate, and maintain Accra Tema Motorway and Extension PPP project 27.7 kilometers is at the procurement stage. Site work is expected to commence in September 2022.
Kwesi Amwakwata, under the Akufo-Addo-led government, said the reconstruction was going to start in November 2021.
Any moment from now, because we are at the concluding ends of it, and we are going to turn the motorway into 6 lanes. We are going to have almost 4 interchanges on it, and if you add other service lanes and slip roads, some areas will go, up to 10 lanes.
It didn't. He promised the reconstruction will commence August 2022.
Those who do not know what is happening here should keep quiet. Those who do not know what is happening here should keep quiet, okay? And we are starting, this year.
Again, they missed that. Now, it is uncertain when the reconstruction will start. There have been attempts in the past to fix portions of the express highway. Although the motorway was made with concrete slabs, bitumen was used to patch some of the potholes.
And the fixing should be permanent fixing, not something temporary. Okay, it's fixed today, the next time they develop another potholes again.
Sadly, these temporary fixes have only worsened the problem. The bitumen patches are now looking like corrugated sheets because of pressure from the vehicles and the heat from the blazing sun. And vehicles can't help but wiggle. The lack of proper maintenance on the Accra Tema Motorway is a major concern for both commercial and personal vehicle users. The once pride and joy of the country has now become a road of shame. For Joy News, Michael Ashali.
Well, to help us delve deeper into the issue, Engineer Abdullahi Mahama, road and building consultant, joins us. And just before I bring him in, you may recall that the Minister of Roads and Highways appeared before the Public Accounts Committee. And there again, he did mention that there were plans to begin the construction or reconstruction of the Tema Motorway. And in December 2021, government signed a $570 million contract with South African firm Motor Angel for the design and construction of the Accra Tema Motorway extension project. According to the minister, though work is yet to start, the challenges that delayed the commencement, according to him, will be dealt with soon. Engineer Abdullahi Mahama, great to have you here this morning. Is reconstruction the way to go with the problems on the Accra Tema Motorway?
Well, good morning. I think this is about the 100th time that we've spoken about the Accra Tema Motorway. It's long overdue. All the experts in the road construction have stated categorically, backed by records, available records that the road motorway has already expired, let me use the words bluntly, and that the mitigating measures that are being carried out just for some few duration, i.e. maybe some 2, 3, 4 months, and then we'll come back again and continue with the mitigating measures so that at least we can make the road a bit usable. But from 1965, the road is gone. I mean, it was commissioned in 1965, so from 1999, 2000, 2010, thereabout, the road was supposed to have been reconstructed. And so the approach is not the best way to go. We've had several presidents, ministers assuring us almost on a yearly basis about the plans, MOUs being signed by Japanese entities, South African entities, the European entities here and there, but still at the same stance. The motorway had to be constructed completely. Last year, we were told that we're going to have multiple lanes, where we'll have some express lanes, and then we'll have service lanes, and they'll be towed separately. Maybe the express lane will be towed, and then the service lane may not be towed. We are still where we are, sadly.
Well, Engineer Maham, the other concern is how over time the area around the motorway has changed so much. I'm talking about settlement of communities on both sides of the stretch, now allowing for commercial vehicles to make stops. Initially, or what we know with highways like the Tema Motorway is that such things are not allowed. People, you know, finding their way into the roads, using unapproved routes and all that. I don't know if you've seen this design. We are told that this South African company was supposed to design this new 6-lane motorway. But what should we be looking out for, considering the way the area has changed? What kind of road or highway should we be looking at constructing?
Revisions being done. What I think is, over time, some years back, we had issues with the development authorities, i.e. the Tema District Council, the Tema Municipal Assembly, who continuously issue for warehouses, factories, and other facilities to be very close to the motorway. I have said time without number on a lot of programs we've had across the media houses that the people who are making the cost of road project in Ghana very expensive are about 3. The Assembly is a major contributor to the deviation of project cost. ECG is another contributor to the variations that we see on road projects. And last one is the Ghana Water Company Limited. But on this motorway, let's deal with the Tema Municipal Assembly. It's like 10 years now that we've been hammering on the fact that the motorway will be expanded. Luckily, from Tetekwashi roundabout or the interchange moving towards the Tema enclave, about a 2-kilometer stretch, I've seen few encroaches. The other side, getting towards the Ashama area to the motorway roundabout, we are so okay with the road reservation. So there will not be much compensation. But the developments along the project corridor, very close to the project corridor, had brought about some of the discomforts, even with floods, where we started experiencing floods within the Tema Motorway, sectional and localized floods. It's as well as the fact that all the tunnels that have been created on the motorway that were constructed were not for vehicular passage. They were for cattle rearing and other other things, like some of them were just the rivers which were going across the motorway. And the cattle at the abattoir were supposed to go underneath so that they don't come into conflict with the motorists who are applying the route. So we need to, moving forward, the motorway is just one example of about 18-kilometer stretch. Government has to find money as soon as possible to get the motorway to be constructed. The design that I've come across is very good. But last year or last 2 years, we started hearing the $570 million. I'm sure this year they have to go higher because the cost of all the various components, the chippings, the cement, the iron rods, and then the bituminous substances, that's the coal tar, had escalated in terms of prices. So I'm not too certain that the $570 million that had been paid for the past 2 years would be adequate for the type of design that we are being made to believe that is going to be the one to use for the construction.
Right. It's interesting you bring the perspective of cost, because I was going to get to that, considering where we find ourselves now with regards to our economy and how much it may cost us to put up this or construct this stretch of road. So moving on, you know, there are different types of materials that are used for different purposes. And there were concerns at the time the potholes were being filled about a year or two ago about what type of material was being used. Should we still stick to what the motorway, the material that was used for the motorway, or we should begin to look at more modern ways of building roads?
Well, the modern ways of building road is still the concrete and then the asphalt. The asphalt have just been improved. They are come in different classes. We have the AC10, the AC20, and other new ones that are still being used for experimentation, actualization, and then execution of the works. So we cannot go away from the asphalt. We cannot go away from the motorway, the concrete. Where you have a very heavy machinery, trucks actually dominating the traffic count and then the traffic impact assessment. All these things come into play when the material engineers are designing the type of pavement that can carry the loads within that area. And so even at the time that we didn't have so much vehicles on our roads, in fact, those heavy-duty trucks were not actually in existence, few were in existence. Because of the industrial hub nature of the Tema enclave at the time, because the ports were very close. The first president of the land thought wise, with the advice of engineers at the time, to do the motorway, which has stayed over 60 years. So we will still be within the asphalt, we'll be within the concrete, and sometimes we'll do the pavement blocks. The pavement blocks and then the concrete come in one bracket. They are called the rigid pavement, whereas the asphalt is the flexible pavement. I feel like anytime the institutions are going to do any road construction in the country, after doing their designs, they should be open to the Ghana Institute of Engineers to critique the design that are going to be used for that particular construction. Because see, I am still amazed myself that the Ebri road that we did from Pedua Salon through Ebri town to Manfi. In fact, that was my first work after school in 2004 to 2007. That road is as new as it was done, that's like yesterday. And that is not an asphalt. So I am still not happy when I hear asphalt overlays being executed across the country on some areas where we don't need them and they are too expensive. At the end of the day, if you come to Achimota towards Hacho, Westland area, and you see asphalt overlays being done to the doorstep of people, individual homes, the cost of that asphalt could have done 4 times, say, the length of a good surface dress road, properly engineered, supervised because of the data available. So this is where some of us think that there was a small diversion as to how we keep on deciding on the type of roads to do within our local areas, as against trying to connect two regions or bigger districts that are bringing direct benefit to the citizenry.
So it's like we've misplaced our priorities, huh?
In a way, we have. But I made a statement. I'm just trying to come up with an article on it. What I see is that when we don't get these three ministerial areas, that is the roads, Ghana Roads, the Roads and Highways Ministry, the Western Housing. I'm sure Western Housing has water company underneath them, or their sanitation, whatever is there. And then the third one is Ministry of Energy or Power. If we don't start to work together as a team, I can give you a typical example. I won't mention the project name, but there's a project which is going to cost about $120 million. Now, the cost of relocating pipes and then the high tension cables or electric cables is about 25% or so of the project cost. And some of these relocations were done about 10 years ago. It means that the government, the Ministry of Roads and Highways is the mother unit. So they have the land or they have the right of way. Any other person who is trying to do any construction along the corridors of the road ought to find out from the Ghana Highway Authority the adequate information that are available either for the maintenance of the same route of the road or expansion of the road in about 5 or 10 years, so that you don't go and bury your utility cables underneath the road, so that in the event of the construction, the project has to bear the cost of a newly laid pipes or ECG lines or telcos which have actually been constructed within the right of way. That when this thing balloons the cost of the project, it shortens the length. So if we're going to do, let's say, 100 kilometers of road with about $100 million, and now you're taking about $15 million of that money to do relocation, it means you are shortening. If you don't have any buffer, as you don't have any other monies to fall on, that means you are shortening the distance of about 100 kilometers by 15 kilometers. Means you are doing 85 kilometers. In the event where you have the money to go and fall on, it means you have increased the cost of the project by under $15 million. And so we need to, it's just about communication, coordination, and available of information to every construction on our roads.
Engineer Mahama, now, but just back to the question on what kind of design we should be going out for because of how the communities have, changed over the years. Should we be looking at creating proper bus stops for these commercial vehicles, what we locally call trotro? Because, I foresee the attitude will not change much, obviously, because people live around or along the motorway now, and they will need to get down at some point and hop onto another vehicle at another point. So in order to avoid this altogether and make the roads more safe, is it advisable if we look at creating stops along the road?
Yes, the designs that I've seen, that's why they had two main components. Because there's a built-up area along the motorway now. There is this express lanes, like somebody who is from Tetekwashi moving straight to like Afinia or Mishekam and beyond, who has nothing to do with anything along the road, would go on the express road. And so in the wisdom of the engineers who have actually now redesigned the motorway, I've seen that there are other lanes which are termed as service lanes, so that anybody who is getting down along or actually entering the vehicle to move along the motorway to their communities can join without necessarily interfering with those who are actually having express movement. So the design that has been done now had factored the communities which are built up along those. Just like, let's take a typical example like Achimota to Ofanko. So when you are at Achimota New Plan and you are moving towards Ofanko, and you have no business at Taifa, Tantra, or Moose Junction, or Mile 7, you are in the express lane. Those who are actually getting down along the road are now in the service lane. So that's the same concept that is going to be used for the construction of the motorway. The only question is that when are we starting? Because the design has actually captured everything, all the challenges that we see along the motorway stretch now. But the construction is what we are waiting for to see when it's going to be started and when it's going to be completed.
And that's a big question that was posed to the minister when he appeared before the Public Accounts Committee. And he said we were going to start soon. He wasn't able to give any specific dates on that one. So Engineer Mahama, while we wait for the big construction to start, what should we be doing? There are people who are falling into potholes on the road, somersaulting vehicles, causing loss of lives. There are issues with no functioning street lights, again, heightening concerns about insecurity. So what should we be doing while we wait for that big construction to begin?
Well, we just have to, this unit under the Ghana Highway Authority, which is known as the Mobile Maintenance Unit, they are in charge of maintaining all the roads to ensure that they are actually within some the riding qualities are maintained. So government just have to put in some money, make some funds available to that department or that division under the Ghana Highway Authority to continuously be monitoring the motorway and keep on with the patching. There are chemicals that can be used to actually treat the whole motorway and then put an overlay. We've had this discussion over time with some of my colleagues that if government feel like they're not going to have money in the next 2 years, then it's better that they actually get that amount of money, engage those experts who brought in these chemicals that can be used to at least seal all the depressed areas on the road, and then at least put one layer asphalt overlay across the stretch of the road so that at the time that government will get the money, they can now do the diversions and do the proper construction. Otherwise, these are the challenges we're going to have day in and out on the road. And then the issues with the lightning. We are having almost all street lights now being solar powered. If you get to the Wager barrier, the toll booth on the Wager barrier, when you do the diversion on the Kaswa bypass, all those lights, street lights there are solar powered lights. In the interim, if we actually value the lives of the people, especially in the evening, those poles can be used and reused. There are no cables connected that become exposed to those who are actually stealing, coming in the night to actually remove the coppers and go and sell. But those ones can be used for now, so that when we are even done, or when we start the construction, we will remove them one after the other and reinstall them at some areas and maybe bring in new ones, particularly for the motorway. It can be done. It can be done.
Mm. Now, just wrapping up this conversation, the AM show, and we are discussing the Tema Motorway, concerns about its safety as potholes continue to develop amidst the issue of non-functioning street lights. Engineer Mahama, we'll be wrapping up shortly, but just some more details given by the minister when he appeared before the Public Accounts Committee. So he mentioned that the reconstruction is not limited to the motorway. It goes up to the Achimota overhead and ends at the new plan traffic light on the Achimota and Sawam Highway. He says it's a major work, and the motorway itself is going to have 4 interchanges at various sections. Some of the lanes will go up to 10, 5 on either side. The reconstruction, and I'm quoting him here, the reconstruction will also include the remodeling of the Tetekwashi interchange to deal with the current traffic situation being experienced there. There will be another interchange at Jowulu Junction, and at the Achimota interchange will also be remodeled. As part of the project, toll plazas and 40 new pedestrian footbridges are to be constructed to ensure safe crossing of pedestrians. So, these interchanges we are doing, some on the motorway, some, on the roads that connect to it, and they too many. It appears that interchanges have become a way for us to deal with traffic situation here in Accra.
Well, I had a chance to see some of those documents, and it was very laudable. Let's take one after the other. Now let's look at the Achimota new plan. I think 3 years ago, when the construction of the Pukwas interchange was about completion, I said we're going to have a bottleneck of traffic at the new plan. Why? Because at the time that Amasaman was actually distributing the traffic flow to Accra in piecemeal, bits and pieces, new plan was able to absorb, because the vehicles that were coming to the new plan junction, which is a signalized intersection, as a traffic light, was receiving the traffic gradually. Okay. Now the motorway at the Pukwas interchange, which is a 4th year, had been completed. What it means is that it frees traffic almost immediately, and the next junction, which is supposed to receive the traffic, is not ready to receive the traffic. So when I heard that the motorway has some of these components to actually construct an interchange at the new plant junction, where we used to have this Malcolm disaster building, that area would be a relief to the central corridor route, i.e. from the new plant through Ofanko, through Amasaman to Nsawam and beyond, and those who are actually moving towards Taifa, Mile 7 and go. So that one must be done. And then the Tetakwasi interchange, almost every day around the peak hours in the morning, around 11 o'clock in the morning to like 2 o'clock lunchtime in the evening, we are confronted with the same volume of traffic and more. Now, your question about interchanges, the only solution we have to actually reduce traffic at junctions is interchange, and that is a well-engineered thought tool. The higher or the more the tier, the less the traffic. So let's talk of Tetakwasi interchange, for instance. It's only 1 tier. Now, if Tetakwasi should have 1 other tier, it means you have reduced the volume of traffic by a certain margin. So like I said, South Africa and Ghana are the only countries in Africa with a 4-tier design like the Pukwase one. So you can see that when you get to Pukwase, there's nothing like traffic at the corridors of the Pukwase interchange. Now, if you had only 1 tier, would have had some traffic to deal with at the Pukwase interchange. So the traffic would only be resolved when we have interchanges at all cross junctions and T junctions. When you have a T junction, if the volume of traffic within that area is less, that's where you start to use the signalized intersection, i.e. the traffic light. But when the volume of traffic increases with time, and you check your traffic impact report, assessment report, and you see that the numbers you are getting warrants a 2-tier, you go for a 2-tier. But if you have money, you can go for a 3-tier, so that in the next 50 years, you are not concerned about whatever is happening in that area, because you have made adequate provision for the tier. So traffic light, junctions or cross junctions can only be eliminated in terms of volume of traffic by the interchanges you have, and that is laudable. There's nothing wrong with that. You can't continue to have the traffic light. You can't continue to have the runabout. The runabout would look at what happened. The motorway runabout. What has it been turned to now? We have a phase 1 of the interchange. Means that you have reduced the traffic drastically, because you have about 4 outlets connected to the runabout. So it takes a long time to create traffic backwards. But now, when I'm on the ground floor going to a flower, whatever it is, I have no business normally going to Tema industrial area, or going to Ashaiman, or going to Michelle Camp. I move in my flight and I'm gone. So once you have those, it's like you're having a storage building, similar to what happens on the road. So let's go by that, and that's the only best way we can do our road constructions in the country, and we'll have less time, traveling time on our roads, and invariably help the health of Ghanaians who are actually sitting in traffic for 3 or 4 hours because of junctions, T junctions, and cross junctions.
So while we wait for the construction to begin, unfortunately, there are people who are losing their lives, who are paying the price for the delay in this construction. And we are told that the contractors are actually in the country, and they've been here for about 2 years waiting for this to begin, and we don't know what exactly is causing the delay. The roads minister wasn't specific, but he just said that those issues have been dealt with, and so construction will commence soon. We hope it does, but we will keep our eyes on the Tema Motorway. Let me now bring in Reverend Cyril Crab, president of the Accident Victim Support Foundation, to find out from him what exactly is being done for persons who suffer as a result of the delay to construct some of these roads, and the kind of stories he can share with us from the Accra Tema Motorway, to be specific. Good morning to you, and thanks for joining us here. Hello, Rev. Hello, Rev. Do we have Rev on the line? Well, it appears we have a challenge with Rev's line. So, wrapping up with you now, Engineer Mahama.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Rev.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please, did you get my question?
Yes, I did. And good morning to you and your cherished viewers and listeners. I have been listening to Mr. Mahama. I hope I get the name right.
Yes, Engineer Mahama.
I think he's made a very excellent submission. It looks nice it sounds good to the ear, but when you come to the ground, it's not as it is. And I thank you for that excellent question. You also asked a very brilliant question that what are we waiting for, since the contractors are in town and been in town for 2 years. It now begins to make one to worry that what exactly is the challenge, and if we have a challenge, what are we doing about it? What also it goes against, to the challenge that it gives to the regular user of the road that uses the road for ends meet, and to take care of the family, and to have some kind of, leverage when it comes to economic activities. It is not there. If you ask us from the accident victims support perspective, these discrepancies that we have, these roads that are not being done, and these roads that have a lot of potholes, it is causing a lot of accidents. We have 15,000 people as at last year, being injured as a result of one bad road or another. Just a common standardized road for people to use so that they can go about their duties. It has become a problem. I used the motorway 3 days today, and it was very challenging. At a point, I have to be very careful the way I was driving. The roads are very, very bad and very deplorable. The way drivers too are driving very impatient. It's very amazing. I just hope that something is done, and is done immediately, so that we who uses the road will have our lives, intact, and will arrive alive. Because where we are right now, I mean, I don't know what to say. Talk is cheap, but we must get the work done, if you ask me. So we'll plead with the kind of victims we are seeing, the story they are telling us. Accra tops the accidents last year. A lot of accidents that happened in the country. The 15,000 that got injured, most of them they got injured in Accra. And sometimes you don't know. Bloomberg has come up with a report that says that Accra has so many dangerous roads, and the motorway, the Tema Motorway, is one of them. Many people have lost their lives. Many people, their lives have been maimed. They have been rejected, invalid. And I think that it's about time that, for the sake of humanity, we need to construct the road without delay.
And I think that sums it all. For the sake of humanity, we're yet to find out from the minister the specifics as to why, even though contractors are said to be in town for about 2 years now, the construction is yet to begin while people perish on that stretch of road. We will be keeping our eyes on this issue and furnish you with details as and when they are made available. But we won't stop reporting about the issue on the Accra Tema Motorway, also because it matters to you, for those of you who ply that route every morning. It is an issue of major concern. And let me say thank you to Reverend Cyril Crab and Engineer Mahama, for joining me to have this conversation. Much later on the show, you would have the opportunity to share your thoughts with us, and you can call us when the phone lines are open and let us know what your concerns are. Well, Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every bottle on the market refreshes you better. You know, water is life, right? We have the perfect sizes for all purposes: 330 ml and 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags, 750 ml for the heavy drinkers, and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. And 19-liter jar bottles are ideal for homes and offices. All you must do now is drink Awake purified drinking water wherever you go. Choose a bottle of Awake purified drinking water today and get quality hydration. Awake purified drinking water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center, another quality product by Casapreco Company Limited. Call 026-2351-251 for bulk purchase. This advert is FDA approved. Coming up next is Drive Safe.
Welcome back on Drive Safe. In today's installment, which is the third on distractions while driving, we're going to be focusing on 5 key things. But before I walk you through those things we're going to be focusing on, so you think you know, here's our quiz question for today. All right, so at the tail end of today's segment, as always, you'll get the answer to the question. We are back at Top Tech Transport and Logistics. We're here with Cecil Gabra, CEO. Cecil, the last time we came in, you know, brother man, what they go on at that? What's new?
Nothing new. We are just moving at a slow pace. Yes, we'll catch up very soon.
You'll catch up soon?
Yes.
We hope so. Let's quickly look at some more distractions. I want us to start with those who turn their cars into their offices or makeshift offices. Some will be working on their laptop, tablet, and all of that. How bad is that?
Well, it's still another issue where we say distractions, right? Why must you hold any gadget apart from your vehicle? That's the issue. If you bring any sort of gadget in, then it means that you are distracting yourself from controlling the equipment. The vehicle is a full equipment, and therefore it needs your mind, it needs your
full focus.
Full focus to drive. So that is not good. And it happens to a lot of people, especially the young guys who need to do a report or who need to do a presentation in the morning, and therefore maybe they have had their own fun somewhere, and they need to get back in the morning and then report to their boss.
Or another thing I noticed, you are hot, you have a paper, an exam in the morning, and you have stuff.
Precisely.
You're in the car and you're trying to quickly catch up on a few
that
things.
Is it.
Charlie, you could
it is so wrong. Let's stop doing it. You have to shut your laptop and concentrate on your driving. That's the best thing. Remember, your family needs you alive in one piece and not in pieces. You open your laptop and then bam. What you even go through when you hit the rear of someone, you will regret. So don't do it at all. Go to your destination. If it's even in your car park, that you can stay there and then work on your laptop, that is fine. But remember too that you have a lot of back aches and neck injuries.
There's also the angle of those ahofedias, those who try to ensure that they are sparkling when they come out, and will be done with all the makeup work, and Cecil would do that.
Yes, it's true.
So making up, we see it all the time, don't we?
Yeah, we see it. The ladies, and then there's one particular lady that I know who put her big makeup bag at the front seat, and then will let maybe a passenger or somebody go to the rear rather. And as she's going, as soon as the traffic slows down, she starts maybe, foundation. Yes, and then from foundation, they go to eyelashes and so on. So they are looking in the mirror.
Different colors at different times of the journey.
The last one is a lipstick that I always tease them, that they will do the lipstick, okay, and then when they finish, they will start, doing this. When you ask them, they will say the lipstick has to cover. It is not good in driving. Stop it. Do it either at your car park or do it at home. Okay, it's the best. It's all part of distractions. You do not have to cause any distraction in driving.
Right.
Okay, you do it at a traffic light, and then if the vehicle is moving, you hear people honking at you. Bam, 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 bam. By the time you realize you have a panic movement, that panic movement will change your heartbeat, and that could cause an accident.
Let's also talk about children, because a lot of the time we're told children must be at the rear. But what is the dynamic there? Children of what age and all of that? And we also know that when you have a child in front, it could also create a death situation if there is an accident because of the airbag and all of that.
Yes.
So what are the ages and why should we not have children at the front seat? That in itself could also be a distraction.
Yes, and that is much more dangerous than every other thing. You have a child, and even mothers will buy the child restraint support seat. That's the first thing you need in a vehicle when you have a baby. And then they will turn it up the opposite direction so that they can see the baby's face. That is so wrong. You don't put any child who is less than 5 years of age in the front seat or in the child seat. Any child who is less than 5 years of age must be seated at your rear. If you are driving, like we drive the left steering wheel, okay, your child must be at the right back so that if there's anything, you can turn quickly, look at the child. Don't put the child at the rear of the driving seat. That is not good. So 5 years of age.
So where must they be?
A child must be at the back right.
Okay, right. So rear, but to the right. So
precisely.
Right.
And the child must be in the child, that's what we call the baby seat, but it's a restrained seat. And a lot of people think when you put the seat in and you put the child in and then you put the belt or the safety belt, that is all. No, you need to buckle up the seat itself.
Oh wow.
The seat itself, yes, you have to buckle it up and then pull it and make sure that it is strapped before you put your child in. It is not a case that you put your child in and then there you go. No. Don't put your child in front if your child is less than 5 years old. And then the major issue is that the vehicle manufacturers are also saying that don't put any child who is less than 12 years of age in the front seat because of the airbag. Right. The airbag can kill any child less than 12 years of age. Right. So all the children must be seated at the back. If it's a baby child restraint support seat, don't allow your children also to stand in the pillar of the seats. That's the two seats. You find children going to school and then they've held the driver's seat and then the passenger seat. They are standing in the middle. That is much more dangerous than anything, because if mother or father goes on the brake, that same child will pass through the windscreen and then unfortunately you run on the child. Who killed your daughter? Who killed your son? It's you. Whose fault is it? It's because of your own negligence. We need to change our lives. All the children must be strapped at the back seat. No child must stand in between the seats, in the pillars. Remember that when the vehicle is moving at 80 kilometers per hour, it means all of us seated in the vehicle are running or moving at the same speed, 80 kilometers per hour. So when there's any sudden stop, it becomes difficult for us to stop.
Right.
And we've done speed already, that every speed which is more than 60 kilometers per hour is a killer.
Let's talk about loud or blaring music. How can that be a distraction, and how bad is it for vehicles that do that? What is the problem?
As a driver, you are driving your vehicle, at least you should, if it's an automatic vehicle, if it is a manual transmission vehicle, you must hear the sound of your vehicle. I'll give you an example. This morning I was driving to the office and I could feel that my fan belt was going off. So if I had played loud music, I wouldn't have heard it. You could hear the sound, which means that the nylon thread on the fan belt was coming off due to something else. Now, you don't need to play loud music in your vehicle. When you play loud music in your vehicle, it means that you cannot identify any problem that you have. That's number one. Number two, if the music is so loud, remember that all the bolts and nuts that has been attached to the body of your vehicle will start reversing. So it will be loosening one day after the other.
On account of the blaring music?
Precisely.
So that's also what happens to the floats, those huge vehicles. Is that what is
Oh, with the floats, the music goes out to the air. But then, if you are driving a saloon vehicle, and or let's say we are standing somewhere on the roadside, a car is coming, and then you can hear some sound, loud sound, boom, boom. That person is one causing a harm to his own tympanic membrane.
Right.
And then secondly, what is happening is that you are also causing a big harm to the vehicle. The vehicle that you see, the whole body is made up of bolts and nuts. So when the sound is at a certain level, it starts loosening the bolts and nuts, and then once upon a time you'll be driving and you hear so many noises coming from your vehicle.
Because the vehicle is basically falling apart.
Precisely.
Owing to the loud music.
Yes.
Let's wrap with one that I reserved for last. And it's not out of mischief. It's just out of... I call it hazardous admiration of beauty or handsomeness. You know where I'm going?
I guess so.
You are driving and you see something nice. But Charlie, in your bid to watch, tell us something.
Ben, that is what we call the natural way of driving, right? Whether you are a pastor or not, honestly speaking, you are driving and then you see a woman that looks like your wife, you look at it by all means, but take your eyes off it immediately. Because if you continuously will look at it, and it happens a lot of time, that you'll be looking at the person and then by the time you realize you hit the rear of
I think there's even a song from so many years ago that talks about that.
Yeah. So you keep
now who calls out?
Yeah, now who calls out? Yes. Yeah. So you keep your eyes on the road. It's difficult for you not to look at it. Even the women will tell you that they also admire men when they see nice and handsome men. They will look at it for a while, but it's only look. Don't do any attempt. So that's also distractions. And,
right. It's been very interesting today. And as we wrap on distractions, all of these, we may be laughing about them, but they're very serious matters because they could kill you, they could kill me. So let's take them seriously. Let's wrap with So You Think You Know bit for today. Here's the answer. And on that note, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us on Drive Safe with me, Benjamin Akakpo. Don't miss the next installment. Have a wonderful day.
I'm grateful that you could stay on the AM show with us. And it's now time to bring you an update on that weekend clash between residents of Bibiani Zongo and the military. We are told that they went to the Asante Gold mines to pick up some items or materials referred to as black. Our JoyNews correspondent, Augustine Boa, joins us on the line with more on this. Augustine, let's start off with the 5 people who went to hospital to receive treatment for various degrees of injury. How are they doing now?
People who were injured yesterday have been discharged by the Bibiani Government Hospital, and the 2 are currently receiving treatment. We understand that the 2 left at the hospital, suffered a gun wound. So it is, I have to say that they are in critical condition, but they are also responding to treatment. So 3 has been discharged, left to 2 at the hospital now.
Just for those who may not really understand what this black is referred to, just explain to us what it is and why these residents went to the concession of the Asante Gold Mines to pick it up.
Well, the residents explained to us that this black or waste dump that we are talking about, normally it is what contains the gold. So when they wash it, sometimes they get gold from. So it's a soil or stones in nature that when you crush it and wash it, you get gold from it. So the residents mostly go to the mining site, pick these items, to crush it, wash it, and then they get gold from these substances. And this has been a warning that the mining people, have been given to the residents not to, engage themselves with this activity, but usually don't oblige to their orders.
So what's the community like this morning after the incident?
So this morning, the presiding member for Bibiani Zongo Local Municipality Assembly, popularly known as Agege, has engaged with the residents of Bibiani Zongo, Bibiani Old Town, the Zongo chiefs, and the man. So as I speak now, there is a dialogue ongoing to settle this, misunderstanding between the mines and then the residents in the area. But we suspect that this is not going to be the end, because this is not the first time the mining company and then the residents of Bibiani Old Town, Bibiani Zongo are engaging in this battle. They've been in this situation for a long time. It started for about 2 years ago, and always authorities, they come in and then they give a temporary resolution to any calamity that may arise. But later they don't find a lasting solution to this issue. So as the assembly presiding member, the assemblyman, and the residents, the mining company have been engaged this morning, we will be likely to say that hopefully a week or two, there's still be this issue that we are talking about.
So you say this is not the first time. Have there been efforts at, dealing with the issue between the mining company and the locals?
Last week, the regional minister, Richard Oben, engaged this mining company, Asante Gold Corporation, the residents. And it's all time up to the location. The residents are complaining that the activities of the mining, is giving them health threat. So they have to be relocated to a different place, of which the mining company is in the process of relocating these residents from Bibiani Old Town, Bibiani Zongo, to a place where they found, to be built some structures for these people. But as I speak now, the mining company have not been able to, resettle these residents, and the activities too are ongoing. So the residents fear that since the mining company keep on doing the activities, they have this idea that they are not going to resettle them to where they've been proposed to send to. So always they engage them, to solve this issue, but it is not having any proper solution to that.
All right. So what is being done now as we speak in the community, and I'm speaking specifically to if there are any meetings ongoing between traditional heads of the company, etc.?
Yes, this morning, as I said, the presiding member, the chief, the assemblyman, and then the residents, we learned that they're having a joint meeting this morning to find a solution to this problem. So there is a meeting ongoing between the presiding member, the Zongo chief, and the residents.
Augustine, but why did the residents go to pick this if it is not on their property? Why do they feel that they deserve it or it belongs to them?
So that's the challenge we cannot explain much. Because the mining company have been telling the residents not to come to their yard. And the mining company, so they are operating on these people's land. So the lasting solution the mining company can give to the residents is to relocate them to a different place. Until then, this issue wouldn't be resolved because they have their farms, they have their lands in that same area. And of which this is the same place the mining company is operating. So until the mining company relocates the residents to a different place, there wouldn't be any peace in Bibiani Zongo and then Bibiani.
And this concession, because you just spoke about relocation, is the concession close to the community or it's inside a bush? Where exactly is it?
The mining company works within the residential area of the people.
Okay.
Like the activities fall within the community. So it is nothing you can say it is far. They are working within the community. So whatever that goes on, the residency, so it is a challenge. It is and the blasting nuisance and other activities, they see, and it affects them directly.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Augustine Bois is a reporter with sister station JoyNews, and he's just been giving us an update on that clash that happened yesterday between residents of Bibiani Zongo and the military, and it's over the Asante Gold Corporation's gold site, where the residents are said to have gone to pick some sand, which is said to contain gold. We don't know why they feel entitled to that. Augustine will try and get us responses to that. So we'll be following up on this issue as well and let you know what happens with this. We'll take a quick breather. When we come back, we will be engaging you. The numbers to call will be up on the screen shortly. But remember, today we've been discussing the debt exchange program. We've been also talking about the Accra Tema Motorway and the delay in the reconstruction, and also this latest one having to do with the Bibiani Zongo clash. Welcome back. Benjamin has joined me, so it's now time to get interactive. The number to call 0302-211-691, 0302-211-691. Hi, Benjamin. Good to see you. How are you? How's your weekend?
The weekend was eventful, but also a bit calm. I attended Mass on Sunday at 6 p.m. Can you imagine?
6 p.m. When I had 6, I thought you were going to say 6 a.m. because I think that the Catholic Church is one of the churches that has the earliest services. If
6:30 in some places. But this week I was supposed to read and I had a 6 p.m. So interestingly, I've not done that in a long while.
All righty. Well, our first caller joins us. Akonoba, good morning to you. Let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, good morning, sweetheart. And my very good friend then. The last time I said my good friend then. I don't know him personally, but
so
I like people
she's sweetheart and I am just
I like people who ask thought-provoking questions.
Right.
Okay? So that's why I said you are my good friend. I like the way you ask the question.
Thank you.
Then it's a little nice. You see,
Thank
my brother, if I am being allowed to allege that I think the government of President Akufo-Addo wants to make everybody poor, rather for them rich, I think I'll be right if I had a letter. You know the reason why? You said you are broke. You are engaging in a debt exchange program. Someone who is broke doesn't spend further. You spend on critical issues like health, security, etc. Things that human beings cannot live without it. But this government says they are broke. And they are running out this, let me say, quote unquote, this unpleasant rent allowance, giving 30 million, dashing out money. You are broke. You are paying 30 million to people. Number two, you said you are broke.
Are you talking about the rent support scheme?
And Sally, my dear, a government who is broke does not engage in further expenses. That is It's rational, my dear. That's as if I'm being allowed to allege that they want to make us poor so that they themselves can be rich. I may be right.
But sorry to engage you. We usually don't do this, but there are those who look at it on the flip side and say, well, it's because times are hard. Government may want to alleviate the struggle of people in getting accommodation, so it's offering some support. Obviously, we'll get interest in the long run.
My dear, you know what? Even that idea that the vice president said, it defeats logic. My dear, it defeats logic. The reason is that there is a law that frowns or that bars landlords and landladies from charging more than 6 months' rent. This is what Ghanaians want. If they don't comply by the law, you make sure the law works. Why is the vice president not talking about that and trying to deceive us? See, let me go on. Number two, you said you are broke. You know the amount of money that they have pumped into the National Cathedral? Hey, so it's National Cathedral and emergency something. That's why I said I don't understand them. Perhaps I'm alleging that they want to make us poor so that they can be rich. Yes.
Akonoba, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. If you have your thoughts as well, you can call the number on your screen and share them with us. So there are very interesting points about this whole rent support scheme, especially on the issue of whether or not government, just by deciding to do this, is not supporting an illegality. We know what the law says about how much you can pay for accommodation. So if you say that I should pay 2 years and you support me to do that, you're supporting an illegality.
I saw something from Rent Control in recent times about the fact that it's not necessarily wrong to pay for 2 years, something of the sort. We have to get into that.
We have to delve
contrary to all what we've heard.
Right. We have another caller.
Yes.
Hello, good morning. Let's hear you, please.
Yeah, I'm Mohammed Sadiq Tamale. I'm going to talk about the miners and the
Bibiani incident, right?
Yes. I want to know why in Ghana, the communities where the gold mines are situated, they don't have cordial relationship with each other. Meanwhile, the gold mines were supposed to develop and assist the community to develop. And if you see that it is open fire, you rather want to kill them. And if you go to even Obuasi and Co, it's the same thing. If you look at it, it's even the communities are very wretched. Meanwhile, they are typing their. So I want to know the government role to make sure that they institute cordial relationship with the community, and both the community and the mining company will all benefit from each other. That's all what I have.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Thank you for sharing with us. A very interesting point he raises there, because in this specific community, we know that this is not a case in isolation. It's something that has been happening.
It's recurring.
If you check the caption on that video, you see Bibiani again. So we know that this is something that's been happening. Obviously, even the presence of the military tells you that there is some tension ongoing. So yeah, it's something that we must look at dealing with.
Well, all of these definitely do not inure to our benefit. We have to find a way of curbing them. But just to go back quickly to the point that Akonoba was making on renting, 30 million Ghana cedis being pumped into this venture. Ordinarily, on the face of things, you would say it's a good thing. But where will it end up? Whom will it end up supporting? Are we going to be colorblind when it comes to political colorations and all of that? Those are the real dynamics. Unfortunately, in our system, we have no proper mechanisms of dealing with these things. There is always the political element. There's always, even when you go to our flagship programs, you would hear people talk about NAPCO and this and that, and how sometimes we politicize everything. So if it's going to serve the purpose and alleviate the suffering of the ordinary Ghanaian, why not? Why not?
Now, you see, talking about alleviating the plight of Ghanaians reminds me of what Reverend Cyril Crab said when we ended that conversation on the roads. Where people have to pay because of the actions or inactions of certain people. And I pray our leaders get it, that every decision they take on behalf of the nation will affect people. And so it must be the best decision at every time. See what's on the front page of the Daily Graphic? Kolebu Roads now death trap. I mean, all across the country, we have issues. Yes, I know, and we're not denying that. And that's why here at JoyNews, we do a drive safe tip where we encourage people to drive responsibly. But we cannot say also that because people do not drive responsibly, we will not do our part, i.e. government, in terms of fixing the roads, local assemblies, making sure that the roads are usable. Well, we have a caller from Dansuman, Ebenezer. Hello, Ebenezer. Let's hear you, please.
Hello.
Hello, Ebenezer. Good morning.
Good morning, and hope you are all doing great.
We are. Thanks for asking. Hope you are too.
Sure. My concerns are two. One of them has got to do with the terrible state of the Tema Motorway.
Okay.
Indeed, it has become a death trap, and the government must do something as quickly as possible to rectify the situation and to save lives. Common even touching of the road is even a challenge to our road ministry. Look at the kind of patches they do there. I don't know whether these guys are even trained to even carry out those jobs. And they are even paid and all that for the shoddy work that they do there, and at the end of the day, even claim people's lives and all that. Even if the construction is not starting anytime soon, they should put the road in a good state for motorists. My second point has got to do with the hula baloo around the cathedral. Indeed, some of us have become very disappointed when we look at the state of this cathedral issue. We look at the money that we have sunk into the creating of that crater over there. Indeed, I'm of the view that that amount of money could have even erected the large general hospital that has been pulled down for some years now. And by now, the large general hospital will be operational by now if all those monies have even gone into the construction of the new hospital. That hospital, the absence of that hospital poses a great challenge for the people of La and even Osu, who actually make use of that facility more often than not. And now they have to look at alternatives. And I think, I don't know as to whether it has got to do with I don't want to say maybe mismanagement, perhaps it's a harsh word that can be used, but maybe we should be able to channel our resources into areas that we think will benefit the masses more than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you too for sharing your thoughts with us, Ebenezer. I mean, I can only sigh at the issue of our roads because, Benjamin, you see, if you travel across the country, you realize that this is not a problem exclusive to Accra. It's all over.
In fact, it's much better in Accra.
And you just wonder sometimes what exactly the problem is. And you just can't help but, you know, sometimes people say, oh, you're too hard on politicians. But sometimes you just wonder, what else can you be? Because, you know, you expect so much and sometimes you get very little.
And they promise so much.
That's the problem.
We will hold them to every promise they make.
We have Emmanuel joining the conversation. Hello, Emmanuel. Let's hear you.
Good morning, my
Good morning, Emmanuel.
My word is about this born individual. I'm one of the individual born over there. So I'm worried.
Okay. But your conveners say you shouldn't worry.
Okay.
They say that they are still pushing for an exemption. The deadline is tomorrow, isn't Benjamin?
Is it?
7th of February. So
it is.
Hopefully you stay glued to JoyNews. Definitely you will hear from them. Subsequent bulletins will be engaged. And as we look forward to tomorrow, close of day tomorrow. So I can understand when there's a lot of uncertainty, especially when it has to do with money you've put away because you were planning and, you know, looking ahead to the future.
It's not easy.
Emmanuel, so you just stay glued to the set, and I'm sure in subsequent bulletins you will hear something about the debt exchange program. You're most welcome.
And that's a genuine concern he's raising there. Everyone who is a bondholder or who has interest in any of these coupons is agitated. We'll see what happens tomorrow, and we'll see. At least some of the permutations we've seen, individual bondholders in terms of those below 59 years and in terms of those who have retired, some concessions have been made. But again, it is my money and the interest on my money that I was expecting, which is supposed to be risk-free. So will they go along with it? Will they not go along with it? Will government make its 80% threshold? And should it even be pegging it that high? Only time will tell. I believe we have another caller on the line. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Your name and where you're calling from, please.
I'm Abdullah Red. I'm calling from Tamale.
Shoot, Abdullah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. What I want to talk about is just about one of your callers said government is broke. And I'm saying that if government is broke, that does not mean that the government should stop working. You understand? So far as government is broke and all this, we have to see government doing something in the country. So for me, I am very grateful and thanks for Nanado for his good work for this country. Look at the number of transit points Akakpo introduced in this country. You can count them accountable. That tells you that the man really understands the economy of this country. Because of this financial distance that we have in the world, that is affecting the economy of this country. I think that Akakpo could have been judged a best government in this country. So I am assuring each and every Ghanaian that they should be patient and give the man some stability chance to work. I think that the economy of this country will bounce back. And I will conclude by saying that my good sister, my brother at the studio there, I think that people have done a very wonderful work for this country. I have to thank you very much for you, the education and the support that you give to this country. We cannot turn our back on it. We have to appreciate and acknowledge what you are doing for this country. And I'm assuring people that Joy FM and everybody who is Joy today, that Akakpo governance will really bounce back. And I think that on the leadership of Alan Charmantini, everything will be all right for this country. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity.
Thank you very much,
Mohammed.
Thank you
too for sharing your thoughts.
I mean, it was just an interesting way to end that, just pushing Alan in there. It was a very interesting way to end his submission, though. But Benjamin, you know, the MPP party appears to be in a bit of interesting times. We still
let's face it, they're facing a crisis of a sort.
I wanted to use that word, but
it is what it is, Bernard.
But I wanted to be...
Look, they're caught in wanting to break the 8. Mm-hmm. Then they are met with all the dynamics we're facing now.
Exactly.
To add to that, you have Baumia, Alan Charmantini. It's not so clear cut. And with all these other contenders.
We were just having that conversation in the newsroom, and there were concerns about whether one of them would choose to be the running mate.
I don't see that.
We don't see that, but also there are also concerns about how
unless
Alan
maybe
had to
one
step
wins
down
and decides to bring the other person along.
Will the other person agree? Well, we don't know. Margaret is joining us from Pantang. Hello, Margaret. Let's hear you.
Hello.
Hello, Margaret. We can hear you. Please go ahead with your submission.
Good morning.
Good morning, Margaret.
I have two concerns. I would like you to address for me. The first one is when you are walking through town, the streets of Accra is too dirty. And then secondly, I've seen that all the covers of the manhole have been removed. It has become very dangerous. So recently, just last Saturday, I was walking through the street around Ridge towards British Council, and most of the holes are just open. So these things, they don't need much money to do these things. And then the streets that are so dirty, it's disgracing Ghana. We are calling a lot of visitors to come and visit us. And what are we presenting to them? Are Ghanaians this dirty?
Margaret, you mean culverts, right? Not manholes. Are you talking about the culverts by the roads?
The culverts.
All right.
Not just the culverts. You know,
it appears that Margaret is listening to us on the television, so there's a bit of a delay. So next time when you call us, Margaret, just mute the television so you can have real-time conversation with us. But I think those are her concerns. One has to do with filth, and the other has to do with open culverts just along the roadside. And then when
I liked how almost surprised she was that these things were. You know, it comes out as though we have to.
Maybe she's had it.
The very best, but for a moment I found it almost slightly amusing because it is what it is.
Our last caller, Peter, is joining us. Hello, Peter. Let's hear you, please.
Hello.
Hi, Peter. We can hear you. Please go ahead with your submission.
Can I make my submission?
Please go ahead.
Okay. I've identified myself. Now, I only want to give you a pat at your back for the way you have been interrogating national issues. But you are doing this on behalf of those of us on the ground who cannot come. I'm there. And I pray that you continue this. So this is the only way that we can put our government on check. If we have done this, if the media had done this earlier, and I believe we will not have come to where we are now. We thank you very much. We hope you will continue. Bye.
Thank you to Peter. Thank you for the pat. On our
so I was just talking about the lady who called. Is it Margaret?
Margaret.
And you know the sentiments she shared, especially when we said we would make Accra the cleanest city
just going to ask what happened
in
to
Africa. And then in recent times, I think the last I heard of that was Cecilia Abnadapa, Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, saying it was still on course and all of that. I don't think we're even in the top 10 cleaner cities in Africa. The last time I checked, not even top 10. So it's just amusing sometimes when you look at our leadership in this country and the promises we make and flagrantly fail to. It does a lot. And my fear is not even so much with the current crop of leadership. Because look, I was speaking to a very prominent person in this country over the weekend, and the person said, you keep bringing 60, 70-year-olds into the picture. Not bad. But a lot of them have antiquated ideas, obsolete. You need more young people who are thinking along with the current trends, who are tapping into technology and all of that too. Look, let's face it. I'm not being ageist. A lot of our leaders, their ideas, they've run out. They have nothing new to offer. The young ones too, you look at a lot of them and the things they tell you, because they've learned from the old ones, they could be worse than even those. That's just
what I was about to say.
So for me, it's such a tricky spot we're in.
Very, very, very tricky. And the young ones, you see, what is the aspiration of a young politician? What is that young politician going into office for? What is the motivation?
You know, that reminds me of Victoria Hammer's infamous $1 million. I'm sorry, but it's one of those examples that you would always get to.
So that's a good point you raise about the young people being in touch with the current trends, you know, being in a better position, arguably, to take us to where we want to be. But what is the motivation of that young politician? What has that young politician seen in their progress, and what will it take for them to deviate from the norm?
And maybe even tellingly, some of these young ones who have had the opportunity of being there,
have they lived
members of parliament, deputy ministers here and there, I'll not mention names. When you look at what they were, some of them were in school, how many years ago? Came out of school fresh into this, NDC, NPP, they are there. I don't want to mention names. Some of them own houses in AU Village, others own filling stations and the rest. Within what space of time? How did they get to that?
Good stuff to ponder on. Well, That's how we'll leave you today on the AM show. We are really grateful that you could join us. Benjamin and I do this every morning with you in mind and with the focus of you when we decide what to bring to the fore. So God willing, tomorrow we are back again.
Another banger. Yeah, we'll be serving you.
And we trust that you will make time to join us. Do stay on the JoyNews channel. Up next is News Desk. Take care.